name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today we have Zachary Ashford, author of Soul Survivor 1 and 2, The Encampment by the Gorge, and Blood Memory. His short fiction has been featured in Dark Moon Digest, The Elements of Horror, Earth Anthology, Trickster's Treats 3 from Things in the Well, and Kyanite Press, as well as his newest novel, When the Cicada Stopped Singing. He was also a suspect in the murder of Max Booth III, and I don't think he's been fully exonerated yet. Zach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me, man. Pleasure to be here. Really appreciate it. So, yeah,
No
good.
problems. So you have never fully been exonerated as the murderer of Max Booth III, is that correct?
No, I think it finished with Andrew saying that I was still on the suspect list.
What were you
I
on the
mean,
suspect list for? What was your transgression against Max? Do you
oh my
remember?
God, what was it? It's the poison egg, really. Yeah.
For those who don't know, Max Booth is a friend of ours who has a podcast called Ghoulish, and he had a whole thing for his 100th anniversary, no, 100th episode event where he died and came back to life. And the way he died was egg related, which I always thought was hilarious. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Oh man, it's great fun. Hey.
So, how do you know Max?
Um, Pretty much like he published my first ever published story, which is actually Blood Memory, which is in that duology. It was in a Dark Moon Digest, which actually you can't see it, but I've actually got a little frame thing because I just thought it was a really cool thing because I sort of started writing, getting that published was just a real cool thing, and there's a Josh Mallerman poem in there and some other really cool authors and stuff. So and then I just sort of knew he did editing, and once I sort of did that, I'm really big on sort of trying to grow it with what I do and not just saying I'm the finished product. And so I started sending him a couple of things to sort of edit and get feedback on. And yeah, just, you sort of get a bit of a conversation going through there. And yeah, it's just been really cool to do that. And I'm just really grateful Max took a chance on that story. And yeah, the last couple of years I've had a couple of things done. And yeah, it's just pretty much a natural kind of progression, I guess. But yeah, that's why. So
And I think you've been on his show previously, right? You were on Ghoulish as a
yeah.
guest by yourself. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it was on there with the guy who does the Dog Dine this podcast. I'm totally blanking on his name right now, which is just a terrible, rude thing to do. but
So, well, what I do here is I like to ask all my guests what their history is with horror. Growing up, did you? So specifically, we'll talk about horror movies, and then we'll get into your horror writing and all that stuff. But for right now, I just mean, horror movies. Growing up as a kid, did you like it? Did you hate it? That sort of thing.
easy. So I guess I think about this a lot because I think I was kind of into horror without knowing I was into horror as a genre. That capital H, I'm a horror head kind of thing. And I often think about it a lot. I mean, my mum had all the Stephen King books on her shelf, and I remember seeing these cool paperback covers and stuff she had, and she's like, "Oh, when you're older," and obviously, people my age, I don't know, like Goosebumps was like I was prime target for that, target market at my age, um, as well as just other cool movies and things. But I also think like I sort of came to horror through monsters and creatures and that kind of stuff. And I put a lot of that down to sort of mythology, like Greek mythology, that kind of stuff. You've got the Hydra and the Minotaur and all that really cool stuff. And so then you see other movies and things that have takes on that. And you eventually branch out. And then people who know me, I'm a massive metalhead as well. So I that kind of really lends itself to horror as well. And just that, I just love that kind of spooky dark stuff. Like, and I think the other thing that's really interesting is I grew up the in England, southeast England, along like these moors and the Romney Marsh. And we sort of moved to Australia when I was 8. but there's all these spooky old churches and people whose houses are haunted and all this kind of stuff. So it's just always piqued my interest. Always really dug that, and yeah. So from there, just branch out, find movies, find books. Obviously moving to those Stephen King books. But no, it's so easy just to it's so big. You just all the different avenues and genres. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, you said something that really surprised me and kind of made me happy because you brought up Greek mythology. And you're actually the first person that I've talked to who's brought up Greek mythology. But that's how I didn't even think about it until you said it. But I think that was my first kind of entrance into horror as well because I was the youngest of three boys, and I was really the only one interested in reading in the house. And so we didn't have any books in the house, and we didn't have a lot of money to buy books. So on Saturday mornings, my dad would drive me to the library, and he would just leave me there for hours. I don't know, too young. It's the '80s childhood of being able to do anything too young. But I was maybe 7 years old, and I would just stay there and read books all day. And the books I was reading was the Greek. Well, after I read all the comics I had, was like Greek mythology, which comics came from Greek mythology as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you said that, I was like, wow, I hadn't even thought about it. But yeah, like there are parts of a lot of Greek mythology that is just absolutely horrific. And if you read like, are you familiar with like Edith Hamilton?
Yeah, I don't think I've actually read any, but the name definitely rings a bell. So
Yeah, she wrote like well back in I don't know if anybody's written anything since then, but like when I was reading them, like she wrote like the essential like works that you needed to read on Greek mythology. And so I just read all of her books or the books that she had written at the time. And yeah, just thinking back now, like a lot of that shit is horrific,
yeah,
especially to a little kid.
oh man, and you could put that lens on it, like, and you could make it just that scene. You could like even the Hydra. If you came into some sort of short story, short movie, just people camping out in that swamp, not knowing it was there, and then there's this thing with 9 friggin' heads, and every time you chop one off, another one grows back. Like that lens could be so different to that adventure lens, and I think it's actually even something I think Max wrote about is like what makes her. You look at Indiana Jones, there's dead stuff coming to life, and there's cults and all that kind of stuff, but it's not horror, it's adventure because the kind of lens you put on it. But I think yeah, as a kid, you're not thinking like that, and so oh, this has got monsters. It's going to be awesome. That was kind of where I was at. And you mentioned comic books as well. I was really I felt like Night Stalkers comics, Blade the Vampire Hunter. I was kind of attracted to those kind of comics,
Yeah,
as well as the Marvel sort of superhero stuff, even though they are Marvel comics, obviously. But
yeah.
yeah, so yeah,
So, what was your? You don't have to tell me your age or anything, but what was your decade like? I'm a '70s and '80s guy.
yeah.
What do you
So
have a decade that you prefer?
look, I was born in '82. So
Hey, same.
it's the '90s, but then it's the '80s too. Like there's still kind of like that mindset. There's that blend there. I mean, when I was consuming and aware of what I was consuming, it's very much the '90s. But I think what's really funny is I was talking with my wife the other day because we were talking about what movies we can watch with the kids, and we watched Conan the Barbarian again recently, and I was like, how the hell did I watch this with my parents all sitting around, family movie? Like it's pretty full on. And I think what happened was there were parts I didn't remember, and I think we were probably getting the TV cut of a lot of stuff because we were watching stuff that was
Yeah,
recorded
that's
off
true.
TV. And so I'm like watching this going, I don't remember all these boobs. Like, and like sitting there kind of awkwardly with my wife watching this movie and just thinking, I would never show my children this. Whereas my dad was like, yeah, we're going to watch Conan. Let's go. Like, and yeah, it's just a really interesting kind of thing that genre, that age. You say that '80s upbringing, just you're just left alone. And but there was even a meme we were laughing at the other day, which is obviously kind of probably pertinent to the ring with the memes, but it was just sort of saying, you've got parents now, you can't leave your kid at home for an hour, or there's lockdown. What are you going to do? Keep them out of school? Who's going to look after them? And like, there's just '80s, '90s parents going, just leave them. Like, and yeah, and I
Yeah.
just thought that was pretty funny because having grown up in that time frame, like I remember the first time I ever got left at home. I still remember it. We were actually still living in England at the time, and Mum actually had a little praying in the car, and so she, you get the whole don't answer the door, don't do it. Like if anyone comes to the door, you mustn't open it, all that kind of stuff. That was like the basic thing, set fire to the house or whatever, but don't open the door. And
Yeah.
the people came and they're like, "Hey, you've got to let." I'm like, "I'm not letting you in. Mum said you can't come in." They're like, "Look, your mum has had a car accident." I'm like, I don't know about that. They've got to get her on the phone, and which is not easy back then. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Wow, that's
funny.
terrifying.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's for sure. And you just know that someone's judging them. Where were you?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a long story. Like,
Don't judge. You don't know.
yeah,
All right. So going back a little bit to your childhood, what was your family like life in reference to? I'm not doing a deep dive in your life here,
yeah,
but
no, that's
just
right.
when it comes to horror, like, did your family like horror movies as well, or did they kind of steer you away from it? And if so, like, when do you think you kind of got into horror, like horror movies and stuff?
Yeah, yeah. No, my family were pretty cool with movies as this 80s, 90s, and it's sort of things like I was kind of that kid who I couldn't watch anything, but I could watch most stuff, and because my wife, her family was like, no, you're not watching The Simpsons, like that sort of family. Whereas we were like Simpsons was every night,
Oh yeah,
and so mum had a lot of horror books on the shelf, and even like later, like before mum died, I knew she was just watching horror movies all the time. So I really got that side of things from her. And like mum was actually Irish, so her dad and my grandparents would tell us stories about the banshee and things like that. So that was
nice,
always really cool.
cool.
But yeah, in terms of actual starting, they just were pretty cruisy with it. And so any kind of movie that was action based is probably where it sort of started. Those movies like The Thing and stuff like that, that even though they're very much horror movies, they still kind of blend into, that whole Kurt Russell, there's some action kind of crossover in it. Not that it's a big, action movie itself, but with the actors, and then you escape from New York. That was a big one of Dad's, that kind of stuff. So from there, and you probably got Ghostbusters as well. I was massive on Ghostbusters as a kid, and the first real horror movie that I was like, okay, this is definitely a horror movie. Movies like The Gate, that was really cool. It's really hard to pinpoint it because it probably was reading. Oh, you know what? I remember there was this ad on the TV, this movie I really wanted to watch. It was on really late at night. I was asking if I could stay up and watch it, and Dad was actually, yeah, and I think it was Poltergeist, um, which is a PG movie we watched with the kids, and but at the time I was like, can I stay up and watch this? Can I stay up and watch this? And Dad was like, oh, if you do all your chores, you can stay up and watch it, and I'll stay up with you and watch it, and I think from there I was just kind of like, this is awesome. This is so the kind of movie I want to watch.
Yeah,
And it really again tied in with that kind of that English ghost story kind of vibe you get a lot, which sort of growing up in that that country town, which I kind of didn't even know was a country town until I look back at it and go, man, that place is right out in the sticks. But yeah, so it fits in there, that sort of ghost stuff, and
it's
poltergeists
it's
and phantasms and all that. So
it's funny because Poltergeist is a PG-13 movie, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it is,
yeah,
but it has one of the most horrifying like scenes in it, which I don't know if they would have edited out for TV, but if you remember in the mirror when that guy's in the mirror and just scratching at his face and just like claws off all his skin and it comes to his bone.
yeah,
Do you remember? That's
yeah,
terrifying. I don't know how that's PG-13, but the rest of the movie is kind of tame. So that one scene seems kind of out of place in that
yeah.
movie, but I love it.
Yeah, no, and so that's from there, and then sort of you go finding stuff, and the other one, this have you ever seen the movie Night of the Lepus? It,
Oh,
it's the
is that a
crazy
black and
giant
white?
rabbits. No, it's in color, but it's the
Okay,
giant rabbits. They're like mutant rabbits that they've gotten some serum or something, and
I'm
and they're
I'm,
like,
I'm writing it down right now.
it's nuts. I love it, and and it's funny because I'd almost kind of forgotten it, and I think Eddie Generous was talking about it one day on Twitter, and I'm like, that's that movie, man. Like it was on like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Turner Classic Movies or something like that, And I've just flicking across, and there's like rabbits just munching on people, which the special effects now aren't exactly excellent, but
Right.
the wash of blood and all that kind of stuff at 12 years old, whatever I was like, this is so cool, and
That's
yeah,
awesome.
that's,
So, you said you were born in England, but you've lived in Australia basically your whole life.
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
So, Australia has like a really good Australian like horror, or they have had a horror scene. Currently, Jennifer Kent, Lee Winnell, James Wan, but in the past also you've had like Brian Trenchard Smith. Have you seen any of his movies?
You'd have to
He
name
did
them for.
Dead End Drive
Oh
In.
yes, yes. We watched that recently, and it's nuts. It's a lot of fun. Hey,
I love that movie.
yeah, we actually had a bit of a binge through several kind of like classic Australian horror movies recently, and it was so good because again, you come back to like what is this mainstream take of the cultural cringe, we call it here, their own sort of movies, but they're so good. And what's the other one? Turkey Shoot. We watched that
Like
as
shit,
well,
he did that.
and yeah, it was just a lot of fun. Some of those movies, and even like some of the modern ones now. So you mentioned Lee Winnell and that, but sort of like the Jamie Blanks movie Storm Warning. I don't know if you've seen that. Like that movie is just toe curling in its intensity, and it's just fantastic. He's the urban legend director, and he's an Aussie guy, and he's done some great films.
What was it
But
called
yeah,
again? I haven't heard of that one.
Storm Warning,
Okay.
and it's fantastic. This couple, they go out on a like a boat cruise for it might be their honeymoon, or they're definitely on a vacation anyway. And the storm's coming, and she's like, we need to go back in. They gets lost, and they land on this island, and it's a horror movie. You kind of know what happens from there. They kind of go into this house, and it's this drug dealer's house, and then things get pretty intense. And it's a really 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 good movie. You kind of watch that with my toes just curled, going, "Oh my god, this is very tense." So
I'm watching that this weekend. But
yeah.
like Australia has some of like the greatest or the best like surprises I've seen, and I don't know if it's because the movies are big there, but when they come over here, they're not advertised well. But like The Loved Ones, that came out in 2009. Have you seen that one? By
No, I haven't.
directed
I'll write that
by
down.
Sean Byrne. You know what? I got a section at the end of this podcast where I'm going to be recommending some movies, so maybe
Do it.
we'll leave it then. But some of my other favorites from like Australia have been like Lake Mungo
Oh,
and
how good is it?
Road Games. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
this is just for my listeners. Like, if you haven't taken a look into like Australian horror movies, it's some of the best stuff that you're gonna find. So I definitely recommend it, and I'll even post some suggestions as well. But all right, so Zach, you've come on to confess your horror sin that you have never seen The Ring. Is that correct?
That is correct. I've never seen The Ring.
All right, so we're talking, of course, The Ring from 2002, which is the remake of Hideo Nakata's 1998 Japanese horror film Ring, which is, of course, itself based on Koji Suzuki's 1991 novel of the same name. I find it funny because, like, by the time The Ring came out in America in 2002, The Ring in Japan had already gone through its like sequel cycle. Cycle of sequels, let's say. So, like 1998, there had been a couple of Ring movies before the 1998 version came out, and then there were like three movies after the 1998 one came out, even before like the American version came out. So I just thought it was kind of funny. And then this remake kind of ushered in a bunch of like the Japanese era in America. And I don't even know, did it also happen worldwide? Like, do you remember The Ring coming out and then a bunch of the Japanese ones making it to Australia?
Yeah, for sure. By that stage, movies were like they were pretty global here and there.
Okay.
So if it was happening across the world, it was definitely happening here as well. And there was even a little period there where we'd get things a week or two beforehand. Now, sort of stuff comes out, and I'm like thinking, we're going to wait months for that here, which I find really
Yeah.
weird in the streaming era. But you'd think they'd want to just put everything out there at the same time so people don't sort of, you know, do the dodgy on it. But
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Sometimes you got to
yeah,
do what you got to do, right?
yeah. Look, I've avoided it. I just think a little bit of patience, and there's so many movies out there you can just chill on it, But
That's why I
um,
have a VPN.
but yeah, no, it's interesting. You had that the Grudge was the other big one here that gets talked about a lot, and I know there are more. I was watching some stuff on YouTube before, just sort of saying
Like
the,
Dark
the big Watchmen.
Water,
Yeah,
Shutter, and The Eye. Those are some of the remakes.
yeah. One Missed Call was another one they mentioned. I haven't seen that either, but
Yeah.
yeah. So
So, one of the questions I ask my guests is, why do you think this particular horror movie passed you by? Is it that you kind of strayed away from Japanese horror, or do you like Japanese horror? You just didn't see this one. What was the case?
uh, I was really thinking about the why, and I think when I sort of get sort of into it, I think like, well, that's that sort of stage of my life. I was sort of, 18, 19, 20, and I had a lot of other stuff going on. It was uni, all these kinds of things. And I just think it was one I just missed, So I would kind of, because I was studying, I didn't have lots of money just to go to the cinema and see movies whenever I wanted. At that point, it's not like now where, my wife and I are both employed and there's a movie out, let's go. At that age, it was like, oh, am I going to eat noodles this week or am I going to go to the cinema? and and yeah, I just missed it. And then kind of the other thing, I guess it's just a little bit kind of a quirk is if it's a remake of something, I usually try to insist on watching the other one first or reading the book first or whatever it is. And in this case, you sort of had both because of the way I watch movies. I kind of like to sit back with a beer in the evening and just kind of chill. Sometimes it comes to a subtitled movie, and I've really got to kind of psych myself up to watch a subtitled movie because I read so much and I just never got to it. And the accessibility of movies as well, like the streaming. I know you can just turn on Tubi and there's the Japanese version of The Ring, which I watched straight after The Ring the other night. But nowadays, you want a movie, you search it up, there it is. But back then, it wasn't so easy, and I just missed it, And then it was always sort of like, oh, there's so many more movies you could always talk about, and it was this one that you'd always hear about, and you'd see Samara at cons and stuff like that. People wearing their Samara suits, and I kind of just thought I knew what the story was anyway. I had a really wrong assumption of what The Ring was like, which is interesting because I kind of thought it was going to be that typical sort um, of a haunted house movie like The Conjuring or something like that. Even though it was before then, I was kind of picturing that sort of scene with the teens, the slasher teens, that kind of stuff. And because I try not to watch trailers too much as well, so I don't spoil the movies.
Yeah,
But
same.
yeah, I was so pleasantly surprised by it because it was not that at all. And yeah, I just missed it.
So, for this episode, I had a bunch of resources I used. Of course, IMDb, Wikipedia, Empire.com. I also used Salon.com. So, uh, let's talk about The Ring from 2002. It was directed by Gore Verbinski, who's done a bunch of movies in the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. He also did The Mexican, and of course, I'm not sure if you're aware, but he's most famous for directing the genre defining Budweiser commercial with the three frogs.
Bud, Bud, Wise, Bud, Bud, Wise, Bud, Bud, Wise, Bud, Wise, Bud, Bud, Wise, Bud, Wise, Bud, Wise, Bud, Wise, Bud.
Do you remember that from the 90s?
Nah, man. We Australia's beer was very limited then.
Oh shit! That joke went straight over your head. Damn it.
Yeah.
Okay, but you know what? This American audience is gonna love that joke. And it was a fucking American phenomenon. I thought it was a worldwide phenomenon, but it was an
Yeah,
American
kids walking
phenomenon.
around school saying it all the time. I
Yeah,
guess like
it's the most annoying thing in the world. But it just blew my mind that this guy is the one who directed that commercial. It just goes to show you, you never know what jobs you're going to get in your career and where you're going to end up. I
yeah,
just love that.
absolutely.
So speaking of Poltergeist, that had a PG rating. I don't know if PG-13 was around yet, and this has a PG-13 rating. Which, if you think about it, like there's blood, but it's from nosebleeds, right?
Yeah,
There's not a lot of other, and also an animal's blood later. We'll find out.
yeah. See, because we actually have a slightly different rating system in Australia. So you're R rated. I often hear a movie's going to be R rated. I'm like, oh, sweet. And then like, oh, it's MA here, which means you have to be 15 to watch it.
Oh,
Um,
really? So then
so
yours are more extreme?
yeah, I'm guessing. I'm
Yeah.
guessing so. And an 18 plus is the R for here. So then we have M, which is like mature audiences, which is kind of similar to your PG-13, and
Okay.
then you have your PG and obviously your family G-rated movies, that kind of stuff.
What was this movie? Do you know what this movie was rated?
Yeah, it was an M here. I'm pretty sure. I can check that.
Okay. So this was written by Aaron Kruger, who actually wrote a bunch of movies in the Transformers franchise. He's writing the new Top Gun, which I've never seen the old Top Gun, and he wrote Scream 3. He actually did some rewrites in Scream 2, and it had some issues with Kevin Williamson there. So I just did my first watch of the Scream franchise, so I was
Yeah, the
kind of
new
reading
one.
up about his history, and it was funny that the circles formed with that and this with Aaron Kruger. It was kind of cool. The film also features an original score composed by Hans Zimmer and Rick Baker on special effects. He's a special effects icon. He's a legend. He did Videodrome and he did Michael Jackson's Thriller along with a bunch of other movies.
This actually make a really good watch with Videodrome, wouldn't it? Like a double feature.
Yeah, I think it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
So the movie stars Naomi Watts and Martin Henderson, both Aussies, I believe.
Yeah.
Naomi Watts from Mulholland Drive and the Funny Games remake. She plays Rachel. And Martin Henderson, he's from Smoking Aces. And he's also from Britney Spears' Toxic video. He plays Noah. So is that why you picked this movie? Did you have like a little Aussie thing going on here?
No, yeah, I'm actually pretty terrible when it comes to actors and actresses. I guess actors is the term these days. But I'm the guy who, when we watch a movie, I'm like, oh, who the fuck is that? Where have I seen them before? And my wife's like, can we just watch the movie? And I get my phone out and like cast list. Oh, they were in this movie. She's like, no one's seen that movie. And I'm like, but I remember. I remember the faces and then the names. I'm shocking with names and
Yeah.
yeah.
You're like my wife. My wife is the same way. But the frustrating, not the frustrating thing. The funny part is like my wife will remember a person's name I'm sorry, their face. Won't remember the name, and then I'll give her the most famous thing that they're remembered from, and she's like, "No, that's not it." It's like, "What do you mean?" And then it's some like obscure thing that she saw them from. I'm like, "Oh, okay, fine."
Yeah, I actually think sometimes like it's even probably some commercial because they don't turn up. I've probably seen some commercial with them in it at some point, and because it'll be like obscure actors too. I'll be like, we watched the this movie Meander. I don't know if you've seen it. Fairly recent. Woman is in a trapped kind of series of tunnels. It was a really cool flick. I'm like halfway through, I'm like, that's the woman out of Vikings. She's like a she marries the son. I was like, oh, what are you talking about? And I'm like, oh, look, there she is. And she's just like, yeah, can we watch the movie now? But yeah, no,
That's great. Also starring Devay Chase as Samara, and David Dorfman as Aiden, the little kid. So, um, as the story begins, it's with two teenage girls being bored with their lives and talking about like electro rays and cell signals and whatnot. And one of the girls says, "Have you heard about this videotape that kills you when you watch it? You start to play it and it's like somebody's nightmare. Then suddenly this woman comes on smiling at you, right? seeing you through the screen, and as soon as it's over, your phone rings. Someone knows you've watched it, and what they say is you will die in 7 days, and exactly 7 days later. And then Katie reveals in horror that she had watched that video at the cabin last weekend with three friends, exactly 7 days earlier. After playing a prank on Becca, her friend, and then some more joking around, Katie is startled by a phone call and looks to the clock next to her bed to reveal that it's 10 p.m. She seems terrified by this call. So they go downstairs to answer, but Katie is afraid to do so, so Becca does. And she picks it up, and it's Katie's mom. After having this like total teenager conversation with her mom, like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, 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 whatever. She hangs up with her mom. And then there's kind of like these series of unexplainable occurrences involving a television in the house turning itself on and off. And then there's like these eerie sounds. Then Katie goes to look for Becca and finds pools of water on the floor in front of her door. But when she opens it, her TV is on, and we see a black and white image of a well. Then the camera quickly zooms into her face, and we see it start to change horribly, which Becca has the misfortune of watching. And that's the opening scene of this movie. And it feels so post Scream to me. You know, like this big opening scene, and then your credits. Although we don't get the credits yet, but I don't know. What did you think of this opening scene?
Yeah, I thought it was great, and this is really in line with what I thought this movie was going to be. So, like I said, like that era was all of those, Scream, Valentine, Urban Legend. No, we did last summer those teen slasher movies, and I kind of thought this was, albeit with a supernatural killer. I thought this was going to be like that, like it was happening at a party or a series of parties or something at school. And so when it opened up, I was like, okay, cool, yeah, this is what I was expecting. And I'm so glad it changed with something else. But what I really liked about that setup, and you see the same kind of thing in Urban Legend, that setup where it's almost like a prologue, like you'd get in a book, where you've got this death scene, and it sets things up, and you go from there. And I really like that structure. I know some people are like, oh, prologues, I like them. I just think they're really cool. But yeah, that setup there, it tells you everything you need to know. It gives you the rules of the world you're in. It gives you the rules of the horror, and it sets the tone pretty well, like for what you're expecting. And then you've got the things that happen afterwards. But I enjoyed it at that point, and I was like, okay, cool. And having not seen the Japanese version till after, it's pretty much identical setup as well. So I thought it was really well done. I enjoyed it, and yeah, everything you needed to know was there. And here's our main character. Here's what happens. Here's the rules. This is why you don't do
Yeah.
it. Let's start the movie. And yeah, it was really
Yeah,
well.
I do like how, I mean, we're into it like, I don't know, the scene's maybe 5 minutes long, maybe a little bit
Yeah.
longer, but like you said, we do get all the rules. I just find it, I just wonder, I wish I could see this through the lens of like what's the appropriate age of a child to watch this movie? 10 years old, 12 years old, whatever.
Yeah.
I wish I could see this movie through their lens and how confused they must be as to what a tape is. You know,
Oh, right, for sure.
like like what are they talking about? Like you just download the movie. What do you mean? You know?
Yeah, yeah. Your friend just Snapchats it to you or whatever they're
Yeah.
doing these days.
Yeah, because like to me, I was like, yeah, perfectly fine. VHS. I had to like step out of myself for a second and be like, hey, this movie is literally 20 years old, which is why we're here talking about it, because it's just
And-
newly eligible to be on the show. And
but like,
VHS has been completely wiped from the zeitgeist, you know?
yeah, and even there, we were buying DVDs by that point. I'm not sure if
Right.
Blu-ray was around, but like we definitely DVDs were in high school. I remember, okay, go buy some of these DVD things, like show my own age, But um, yeah, so it's interesting choice, because it always just raises the question: why don't you just record an episode of Seinfeld over that and story's done?
Oh shit. Right. Yeah, right. What I was going to say was it goes to show like how you can maybe mess up a movie if you focus on technology too much. Because I actually did a Japanese movie that came out after the original Japanese Ring came out, called Pulse. Not sure if you've ever seen that one, but I did the that Japanese version, just a couple, maybe it was my fourth or fifth episode or something, and it was about using like computer technology that was so old it made no sense to us, and we grew up in that era, so we're like, this this makes no sense. you know
Yeah,
and so luckily the technology in this is just a tape, and tapes are, I mean, go back until like, it's just reel to reel, and reel
yeah,
to reel goes back decades into the earliest form of film. So I
yeah,
think it's not like such a technology that you can't, like, it just doesn't make any sense. But yeah, I'd wonder how I'd love to show it to like a kid who doesn't have any sense of VHS tapes.
yeah. It definitely. I mean, I guess what the book was 91. I've got it there on the shelf. I haven't read it. I picked it up at a charity sale one day, and that was another reason why we held off. Oh, we should watch it because it comes up in conversations. We should watch it. We should watch it. Oh, I've got the book there. I got to wait. Then I got to
Yeah.
watch the Japanese bit. But yeah, no, it's interesting because like even I guess that there's a sort of collectability and nostalgia to VHS, so it's not completely unfamiliar. I guess to people our age, like if I was to say to my 9 year old son VHS, he'd go, "You, what are you talking about? I've seen those on regular show, maybe."
Yeah.
Like. But yeah, no, it is an interesting one. Like because even in 2002, it's cusping, and they must have been going, don't know.
Oh yeah, I think by 2002, I can't remember. I think like the last, yeah, I couldn't even tell you what the last VHS tape was. Even though I have some VHS tapes right here in my office, it's just because of the collectability. I collect
Yeah,
Halloween stuff, but I think maybe I do know that VHS is making a comeback similar to vinyl made a comeback within the last decade or so, and so maybe I think kids are being introduced to VHS in that way, which is always kind of cool
yeah.
because, like, for me, like, physical media forever. I love physical media.
Yeah, it's so good. And it's interesting because even like sort of bands will release like a cassette tape recording of the album as a collectible, which is super
Right.
cool. I mean, no one's got a Walkman, but
Right.
you've got the cassette
Yeah.
tape. Yeah, no, it's really cool. Um, yeah, and like I said, my eldest daughter, she was into vinyl. I'm like, I don't even have any vinyl. What are you doing with vinyl? So hopefully, yeah, it'd be good to see. But
Well, it's funny because the only reason I never had vinyl. Like, my parents had vinyl, I never had vinyl. By the time I was old enough to buy music, it was CDs, or and tapes. But
yeah,
I got into collecting vinyl through horror because they would started releasing horror soundtracks to, like, Mondo and Death Waltz and that sort of stuff. And so from that, I started collecting regular music vinyl. I had my own vinyl recorder, so it's like horror. It's kind of taught me this other world, which was kind of cool.
yeah, it's very cool. It's really kind of unique, and even I was talking to another author friend, Dan Russell, who we kind of beta read a lot of each other's work, and just that I guess you kind of have it within action movies a bit, but the love of the directors and this sort of stuff that you get in horror, like you don't see other genres like, oh yeah, that was directed by so and so, and it's got this genre, veteran in it. Like it's a
Right.
really cool kind of, it's cultish, and that's what's so cool about it. Like it's,
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think horror kind of protects their own because, like,
mm,
horror doesn't get respect from the Academy, from anybody, and so when an actor or a director shows love by staying within the genre, then the fans kind of prop them up and love them. That's why, like,
yeah,
your Jamie Lee Curtis's and your Barbara Cramptons and Robert England's and all that sort of stuff. Like, we love them because they showed us respect.
yeah,
And you're right, you don't see that in comedy, you don't see that in, like, dramas, you don't see that, at least I don't see it, but I think it's fair to
yeah,
say you don't see that in other genres. But you always got your like Paul Thomas Anderson fans, I guess. That sort of stuff. All right, so the film then introduces Katie's aunt, Rachel, played by Naomi Watts. She's a journalist living in Seattle. Her son, Aiden, was not only Katie's cousin, but was also a good friend. and he seems to be sensitive to psychic occurrences, which is never really explained in the movie unless I missed it, which you can let me know. But
Mm.
yeah, he seems to be able to have a connection with certain entities. And then Aiden's uh, so Rachel is going to Aiden's school for a teacher conference, and Aiden's teacher brings to Rachel's attention that he had been drawing pictures of his cousin dead in the ground for days before Katie actually died. And Rachel is like such a bitch to his teacher for no reason. And I don't know if we're supposed to like her or not, but this isn't like setting me up to like this character.
Yeah, it's because I am a teacher, and I'm just like, oh, I've seen parents like you before. Like, yeah, you know, and it's just funny. But yeah, you do that very protective. But I think when you move past that context, like, I think what it really shows is, she's protecting her child, which is interesting because she obviously knows some stuff that others don't. And he said it's never explained; it's only alluded to. But I kind of this is the one part of the film I struggled with the most was just and look, this is probably my own kind of world experience. I just didn't believe her as a mother um, through most of the film, even though she is, and obviously it's just take it or don't. But I was always just like, you just look way too young to be this kid's mother. I don't even know the actual ages or anything like that, but there's the
Uh-huh.
one part, and it was such a minor thing. I was like, really?
I
Um,
get that. I completely agree with you, but I think maybe that was meant to be the case with that character because
yeah,
as we see later on, like Aiden talks like a middle-aged man. Like
yeah,
he says like we don't have enough time on this planet. Like I'm
yeah,
surprised he didn't
right.
like take a long drag off of a cigarette after he said that.
Yeah,
He also
yeah,
calls his mom by her first name, and like
yeah,
later on, like he's dressing himself up in suits and walking to school by himself. So I think kids are products of their environment, right? So he
yeah,
grew
right.
up this way because he needed to, because she was, even though she was around, she's not around. Even the teacher even says like something to the effect of like he needs to talk, and she's like he knows I'm there, and she's like yeah, just because he knows you're there doesn't mean that like you can't just come straight out and ask, you know. So I think you picked up on something that they were trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of that very clinical kind of disassociation going on in the film as well. And I think even this, for the first time just there, I really thought you've got, because obviously a lot of the subtext is the husband and wife or split marriage, broken family with the son and again I'm blanking on the name, the partner. And then that's kind of I guess a little bit mirrored this kid they really wanted in Samara, and then got rid of. Um, as we see the plot unfolds later on. And there's probably
Yeah.
some kind of good stuff to look into an analysis there. But yeah, it's this damaged kid, as you're saying, and I was even getting that sort of sixth sense vibes from him early in the piece as
De-
well. Even like the look of the
definitely.
kid, like, and I thought that was pretty deliberate. And
Yeah,
because there is a psychic character in the Japanese version, isn't there? Telepathic, psychic, sensitive. I don't know what you'd call it, but
yeah.
hmm.
And this came out in 2002 after I think the Sixth Sense was like 98 or something like that. In fact, I was reading up, I don't remember what website it was, but they said that the success of the Sixth Sense is what prompted, I believe it's Paramount, the studio for this movie. That's what prompted them to greenlight making this movie, is because they knew that audiences wanted like supernatural kid stuff.
There you go. And there's probably why, someone going, make sure you got that kid in there. Like,
Make sure you have that creepy ass kid in there. I know you don't know this act, but I have a very strong stance on creepy ass kids in horror movies. I say fuck them kids. I don't like them. They're too creepy for me. Keep them away.
yeah, there was, what else we watched? There was something we were talking about with my wife, and we watched something with creepy kids. Oh, Sinister, which again would make a great watch with this, because you've still got the film and not the VHS, but you've got the reel to reel
Yeah,
kind of film technology going on. So
yeah, yeah,
another
yeah.
interesting choice considering the era the film was made. and
And if I
because
recall correctly, I think they also tint the color of the film like they did in this movie in that
yeah,
movie as well, which
yeah,
I did not. I don't know how you felt about it. I didn't appreciate it. Like the whole movie has this green tint to it, and
yeah,
it's meant to evoke like this sickness. But the whole
yeah,
time, it was front of my mind instead of back of my mind, which is what they were going for. So the whole time, I wasn't allowed to fully immerse myself in the movie because I was thinking this movie looks like green the whole time. That's how I
yeah.
felt about it.
Yeah, look, I was aware of it. It kind of didn't bug me. I thought it was kind of effective. Like you've also kind of got a lot of those sort of staticky sounds in the soundtrack and that immersion. I was kind of okay with that, and it almost reminded me a bit of like a DC movie. The color, I know they go this is today, but that they get panned for a bit. But
Yeah, I don't like them in
yeah,
that either.
yeah, yeah. But no, it was interesting. I think it kind of worked here. I mean, yeah,
I
it's
wouldn't
like
mind if for some scenes maybe, but like the whole movie, for me it took me out of it. It doesn't sound like
yeah,
it did for you with, but for me it did. But Aiden even like goes as far as like putting out her dress for her because they're getting ready to go to the funeral.
yeah,
But she's like looking around for it, like, hey, Aiden, have you seen my dress? And finally, like, it's out in front, like
yeah,
out in the living room or something. But to me, it's like, hey, kid, if you hadn't moved the dress, she would know where it is. Yeah.
yeah.
So get out of here, you
Yeah.
creepy kid.
It's just a little troll, basically.
Yeah. But he's also, this is where he's tying his own tie. I'm like, little kids don't have the finger dexterity. I refuse to believe it. I, I'm also a little jealous because at 39 years old, I don't know how to tie a tie. So
Oh,
I definitely don't believe he does how to tie a
yeah.
tie.
And look, one of my previous schools was kind of a fairly fancy private school, and the boys would come in wearing their blazers. You see these ties, you're just like, man, come here, I'll show you how to do that. Like, go open your phone, go to YouTube, how to tie a tie. That's your homework.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah. But
All right,
yeah, they don't
Zach,
get it.
we've come to a section of the podcast that I am now titling Miguel's Confessions. And I confess to you that I have zipper ties.
Yeah, do
Very
it.
easy, man.
Yeah, man.
Just it's always a perfect knot, man. What am I doing? What do I care? Who am I trying
That's
to
it. Because
impress?
yeah, that's right. And you know what? It's always the perfect length as well, and that's the best thing about it. You know.
Exactly. Nobody's ever confused it. They may be talking behind my back, but to my face, nobody's ever said anything. All right. So at Katie's funeral, Rachel's sister asks her to investigate her daughter's death. She says she spent. I know it's not funny. This is a very sad moment, but she says she spent 4 hours on the internet and didn't find any instance of a 16-year-old's heart giving out. Like 4 hours isn't a long amount of time. Like
Especially in
researching
that
something
tent
on
of
the internet.
grief, right? Like, oh well, this is clearly an unsolved mystery.
But you know what? Like I'm just thinking about it now. She is someone who would say like, do your own research when it comes
Yeah,
to like I've done my own research on vaccines. Oh, really? You've spent four
yeah,
hours? Cool.
yeah. It's so good. You know what? You're a journalist. You do it. Like, you know this research. Like, but no, it's interesting. And about dial-up internet at the time, that's probably like three websites.
That's right. The amount of information even available to you in 2002 is minimal compared to what's available now.
Yeah, you got these flashing, sparkly websites, and what was it? Can't remember the name. Oh, terrible memory.
Like geosites or something like that.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Always like these flashing icons everywhere. No real concept of how to set up a web page so people want to read it. It's like, oh my god, my eyes hurt. Music playing,
Like
a MIDI file.
different sections of the page have different scroll bars.
Yeah,
It's like, what are we doing here, guys?
yeah, yeah.
All
No,
right.
and yeah, this is where, like, for me, the movie became something I wasn't expecting. I guess I should have, given the era, because a lot of the sort of the '90s sort of thriller kind of films, they are investigative, and it becomes that, and I thought that was really interesting because, as I said before, I was much more expecting. I was, that kind of teenager setup where they're passing a video around, and the screen kind of setup.
Yeah, I could see where you'd think that, especially in the era, but like,
Mm.
I don't think I don't think Japanese cinema had that before like Battle Royale, and to this day,
Yeah,
I haven't really kept up on recent Japanese horror movies, but I know like the turn of the century or in the '90s, they didn't really follow that formula. But I definitely understand you thinking that of an American remake around 2002.
yeah. That's it. So I really had very little awareness of it, and yeah, I kind of enjoyed where it went after that, and that it was that slow burn, kind of let's get to the bottom of this. It was good.
So she begs her sister to look into it because she said she saw her face, and then we get this great shot of Katie's face in the closet where she's kind of like laid. She's on her, what is it? She's like sat down in a closet, and her
Yeah, sort of in the
face.
corner kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks great. The effects look amazing. Like, I wasn't expecting this. It had been a while since I'd seen this movie, and the when I saw the effect, I was like, "Holy shit!" I had to immediately look up and see who did the effects. I was so happy to see it was Rick Baker because it looks amazing. I
yeah.
guess if you're gonna have a PG-13 kind of bloodless movie, you should make sure your special effects are looking great.
Yeah, and it did, and even just the way it just flashed on really briefly, I was like, whoa, it was that was creepy. It was effective. It was very good.
Yeah, they never
Stuff.
let. There's a kind of a difference, a different way to approach things. Like in most horror movies of the time, or even from the '80s and '90s, they would kind of focus in on the horror and then like let you get comfortable in it. But this movie, they showed you like a quick flash of it, and then bam, you're on to something else. So you never got comfortable. Well, for me, I never got comfortable with in that horror.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was good. Very cleverly done. Very good choice. That
Yeah.
snippet kind of thing. Yeah, that periphery of it as well, I guess, which fits into they've got to stretch the video out and find out. Oh,
Yeah,
there's a lighthouse. Yeah, it's good.
I like that part. Yeah.
Mm.
So Rachel talks to Katie's friends outside, and they spill the tea about the videotape, and we find out the others who went to the cabin had died as well. In the meantime, Aiden goes upstairs to Katie's room and looks at the TV that we saw earlier. Rachel comes to take him out, and while she's there, she comes across Katie's, I don't know, trapper keeper binder, whatever, with images with the faces all scratched out, as well as a receipt for some photos to be processed. Again, any like millennials or zennials watching this are like, what the hell? What's happening here? Because
Yeah.
they don't know about taking your pictures to be processed.
No. Yeah. Absolutely. Again, that's something. I guess watching it through my lens, it didn't even occur to me. But yeah, I can now see like if I was to do parts of this in class, the kids would be going, "What are they doing?" Oh yeah, we used to have to go to the shops, and then you got 13 photos, and that was it. Like you'd wait 3 days.
You wait 3 days to see if your pictures came out,
Yeah.
or if your finger was in front of the. Oh man, and a lot of times the pictures would come out looking like you just saw the videotape for the ring anyway because they would be blurry.
Yeah. Yeah, someone moved and that was it. It was just tough shit. You didn't get a redo. You've
Yeah,
only got
exactly.
3 left. That's it. It's got to be what it is.
Everybody stop moving. It's funny because my wife actually got for Christmas. She got a Polaroid camera
Yeah.
with some footage, and like the pictures are terrible. Like everything's whitewashed,
Yeah.
but there's a charm. There's a certain charm to it that like a certain aesthetic that you only get from Polaroid. It's like a very 2D image, but
Yeah.
it looks so cool. I love it.
Yeah, but we had someone at our family Christmas. They had one as well. We're taking the photos. They were like little tiny. I'll keep my hand up so if you can see me. Sorry, the camera, but little tiny photos, little tiny Polaroid photos, and and it was the same kind of deal. And you're just like, it's really cool. And I think it's one of those interesting things as well. Complete sidetrack, but when you got your HD setup now and you watch like an older film, you can almost like the definition's so high quality, you can almost see the sets, the bolts and things holding things together in the background, and you're like,
oh, this is clearly filmed on a set. Like, which obviously it is. It's a film.
Yeah,
That's how they make them. But yeah, it's interesting. Whereas I can't, that old school kind of style. The camera won't show that up. That's fine.
yeah, yeah. Back in the day, they never ever imagined that we'd be like picking apart every still from their movies from like 1930.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
honestly like they thought you would see it once, maybe twice in the theater, and then they'd be forgotten. They had
yeah,
no idea of this home, this industry where people would have these movies at home.
yeah. Absolutely.
Rachel picks up the photos and sees scenes of Katie and her friends hanging at the cabin. The last picture, so the pictures are going chronologically, and the last picture is all of their faces heavily distorted. She does some digging and finds that all the kids died at or around 10 p.m. Her investigation leads her to the same cabin in the mountains where Katie and her friends had watched the tape. And then I don't know if you noticed, but by the cabin, there's like this beautiful Japanese maple. Uh, and the fruit from that tree is known as Samara, the
Ah, I
Samara
didn't know
fruit.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So this
cool.
is beautifully shot. This whole scene, you see the sun going through the leaves and all that. I really think it's beautiful. Like the director did a great job with the imagery and the realism in the movie.
Yeah,
That wasn't the problem for me. That there was another problem that I'll get to later, but the movie looks absolutely beautiful.
yeah.
Besides the
I
color
actually did.
tinting,
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah, I know you. Yeah, I did too. Watching it, I was like, this movie looks great. You know.
yeah,
And then I was only reading up before he made a lot of music videos, and as soon
right.
as I read that, I was like, oh, yeah, I could definitely see that.
So she finds a tape and she pops it into the VCR. Do you want to describe some of these images that she sees on the tape? I mean, you don't have to describe all of them or anything, but do you remember
Yeah.
any that stuck out to you?
It, there's that one. It's almost like the maggots kind of melting into people kind of look.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I thought.
I was just say there's also a scene of like a ladder leaning up against a wall.
Yeah.
Um, there's a scene of a woman combing her hair in a
Yeah. That's
mirror.
yeah. But yeah, the whole thing, and I thought it was so cleverly shot in that you've got those really clear images, and then there's a lot of like, what is that? It's kind of really sucking you in to look at it, and I guess that's part of the building up, the suspense, building up the terror into what happens later on. Where you're looking right into it, trying to get in deep and make it out, and then all of a sudden, here she comes. But
Right.
yeah, no, I enjoyed watching that, and even just the way it was like so many movies, they'd be tempted to not play the whole thing, but like here, just play it. You can watch it. This is the movie that's going to kill you in 7 days. Here it is.
Right. Oh, I would riot if they don't show
Yeah,
the whole video,
yeah. But yeah, no, it was good. Yeah, and
It's a
just
bunch of like creepy images and I think even
yeah,
Noah, the father, or he's a father, but they were never married. I think it's just a
yeah,
boyfriend. He even says later on after he watches it, he's like, it's very student filmy.
yeah,
It's an excellent student film, but does feel like just intercut images that have nothing to do with each other until you kind of find out that they are in fact
yeah.
connected. So after that, after she watches the video, the phone rings and a girl says 7 days. Then Rachel runs out of the cabin, and I fully thought like there's this aerial view above her of the cabin and of her, and it looks really nice. And I fully thought she was going to go full Jennifer Love Hewitt from I Know What You Did Last Summer and just be like, "What are you waiting for?" Right? Because that's the kind of view that it was. But that's kind of I feel like this is maybe the first third of the movie. Like we know
Mm.
what's happening now, and I think they've set it up really well. The next scene is Aiden walking out to the school bus by himself. Again, I'm thinking, how old is this little motherfucker? Like, this can't be legal. He's how okay? So you have a child and you're also a teacher. So I think you're better at gauging ages of children. How old would you say this child is?
Oh man, that kid looks like a primary school kid to me. I don't know what you call like, sort of 5 to 11, 12 years old in America. We call that primary school. He doesn't
Um,
look any older than my boy who's 9. You know.
okay. So you would say, yeah, I thought maybe 6 or 7, but maybe like 8 or 9
Yeah,
to
so
it.
he definitely doesn't look old. He's got. It looks like he might be playing a little bit younger, the actor maybe as well.
Okay.
But
So yeah, so but it's just it's just weird to me. Like he's just like announcing to his mom that he's just going to school, and it's just kind of it's just strange. But so that same day, she calls Noah, who's Aiden's father, to see the video. Oh, actually, there's a scene in which like Noah's walking up to the building and Aiden's leaving, and they kind of see each other and they look at each other, but they don't speak.
is that the
So
first time we see Noah?
yes, I believe that's the first time we see Noah.
Yeah, because he's walking. I was just like, okay, who's this creepy guy? Because it's right after the video scene, and you're thinking, and this is where I'm kind of thinking, I thought the movie was probably going to be more intense than it is. Not to say it doesn't have intense moments, but it's a suspenseful film. You know, it's not just like bam, 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 bam.
Right.
And so I was kind of thinking like something creepy might happen there, but it's just a really, I can't
Sad
see my
scene
fingers, but yeah, yeah, um, yeah, just
where he
that
doesn't
face
seem
off.
to have any relationship with his father, and when we kind of like find
Yeah,
out
and
more about that a little bit
he
later.
must have known it was his father, but there's no. It's like then Noah, what are you doing, mate? Say good day to your kid.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah, not even a head nod, not even a
yeah,
sub.
there's a few things like that like you kind of said like, oh, I spent 4 hours researching, where it's obviously done just to move the plot along. Like I think I said the kids before, like right outside the house, they're like, no, no, we're not going to tell you anything. It was a big secret. Okay, well, can I have a cigarette? Oh, you're cool. Like, and they just spill the beans, like, and which
Yeah.
kind of rings true for kids. You're like, oh, this person's cool. They had a smoke with us. Like, oh, you're so manipulative. Like, easy to manipulate. But
So she calls Noah. Noah comes and she shows him the video. And while she's outside waiting for him to be done watching it, there was kind of this cool Easter egg. I'm not sure if you caught, where she's looking across the way at another. So she's in this like really tall apartment building, and across the way there's another apartment building, and she's looking through the windows, kind of creepily, right, like a little creep.
yeah,
And one of the windows she's looking through, there's a man in a wheelchair with a broken leg, and that man is watching a race on TV. Well, that's I think he was doing a little Easter egg for Alfred Hitchcock's movie Rear Window.
yeah. I said to my wife, I said, hey, it's yeah.
Rear Window, right? Yeah, because he didn't he get it break his leg in an accident, in a car accident, like in a race.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how it was broken, but I just remember like the guy in the wheelchair, then and then
Yeah,
like the camera, yeah, watching the watch
so
her
that
back,
was kind of
that sort
cool.
of stuff.
That was like a deep
Yeah,
cut there.
but then I guess even like the fact that was he watching like horse racing or car racing? This you said racing.
Car racing. That's
Oh,
car
okay, I was
racing.
gonna say if it was horse racing, that'd be a cool link to later on as well. But
Right. Yeah. That goddamn. When we get to that horse, man, that horse got it worst of all.
yeah, man,
Uh,
yeah,
so, um, so Noah is sarcastic and skeptical about the link between the videos and the deaths, but Rachel becomes increasingly convinced after pictures taken of her show her face severely distorted, just like the effect that was present in the pictures of Katie and her friends the day after watching the tape. So she says to him, "Am I like a easily susceptible person? Do I like believe in do people easily? Am I a skeptic? Basically, he's like, yeah, I think you are. He's like, so then kind of take me seriously here when I'm talking to you. So he's like, okay, fine, just make me a copy and I'll look into it. And she says, I want to know who made it and how they made it. So that's what he's going to be researching. That's his side quest.
yeah, and I guess at the same time as well, like she's skeptical about it, but she's also just shows him the whole video straight up. Like, if this does work, yeah, you're dead, dude. Like, um, so
Yeah,
yeah, the ultimate
she was
kind of
she was reckless with that, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, later on, you reckon she had a moment of guilt later? I don't know, but yeah, it
And
definitely does
here,
through the story. But
I, I I know you saw the original, the Japanese version, and while I don't want to get bogged down into the differences,
Yeah.
like the step by step differences, but because I'd probably do the original ring with somebody else,
Mm.
but there are some important differences that are very obvious. One is the ending, but also here the relationship is different. Whereas like in this one they don't have a relationship. The other one it just seems strained or something. So after viewing the tape, strange things begin to happen to Rachel, and presumably anybody else who's viewed the cursed images. She's experiencing terrible nightmares, nosebleeds, as we'll see later on, and like these curious, surreal situations, like seeing the ladder from the video after she leaves Noah's house. It seems to me like the video is showing her images that she's going to see throughout these 7 days
Yeah.
leading up to her death if she doesn't do something.
Mm.
So it's kind of like when she sees the image, not only does she make a connection to the video, she's like, oh, this is where that image is from, but also, oh shit, I'm closer to the end of the video
Yeah, right.
now.
Yeah, absolutely. And just yeah, it's. I always love that method of just building, your tension towards the end. That you've got the time limit. Like tension naturally builds as you get closer. It's like diffusing a bomb sort of thing.
So Rachel's investigation turns to the tape itself, which contains a seemingly random series of disturbing, grainy black and white images. Rachel then visits Becca, who was the friend at the beginning of the movie, who is now in a mental institution. And there's this great scene of her like being led to the interview room, and
Mm.
she's walking very slowly down. Do you remember this part?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
like this nurse is following her with like this screen blocking her from seeing any TVs. So the nurse is walking with her, and then Becca slows down to watch it, to look at a TV, and the nurse is like, Becca, come on, let's go, and she keeps walking. The first time I saw it, I didn't understand what that was, but like, I don't know, the second or third time I seen it, I was like, oh shit, that's fucked up. Either she didn't see the video, so she couldn't be like being attacked by Samara, but she saw Samara come out. As we're gonna find out later on, what happens is
Mm.
Samara comes out of the TV. She saw that happen, and so she's probably like terrified of TVs. That's amazing. I hadn't even
Yeah.
thought that could be a thing.
Yeah, no. Again, first time you mentioned this, it makes sense completely. I didn't pick up on it, but it was my first watch of the film. But I'd be interested to go back and see that now and go, oh, okay, because I love those things. You notice things back, and like that's where the real cleverness in this kind of thing is, like the foreshadowing. And one of the things I feel pretty sure about, even though I've got no evidence, is that I think there'd be so many little bits like that in this film that have put in, maybe snippets of Samara, other bits of the video, like things in the periphery that you'd see, and like rings. I'm sure that there'd be a motif of the ring and the second. There's lots of them in there, like the well, the ring, this kind of stuff. But I'm sure there'd be so many that if you were to sit there and pick up on it, it'd be almost like watching Haunting of Hill House. Oh, there's a ghost, there's a ghost.
Yeah, it would be like The Shining, how they said that he put in so many like references and stuff like that. It'd be like that, because
Yeah,
you're right. I forgot to mention throughout the movie, and even at the beginning of the movie, there you do see these rings, and even after we've seen the video, we even see like a split second of the video interspliced into the movie, kind of
yeah,
like Fight Club did. Do you
yeah,
remember?
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah, yeah.
kind of
How
like
could you
Fight Club did with
forget?
that. That is kind of clever and kind of cool that they did that. So Rachel begs Becca, she's like, please, I need to know what happened. And Becca, very creepily, so Becca looks fucked, like her face is all pale. She looks similar to Samara. um,
Yeah,
her face is
definitely.
pale, and it's in front of her face and all that. It's like greasy, and
Yeah,
uh, she's like, I need to know. And she says, she grabs Rachel's hand, and she says, you will know soon, and she will show you. And then she says, 4 days. So while she's investigating those images, weird shit starts to happen. So, such as when she pauses a section uh, of the cursed tape, in which a fly is kind of crawling across the screen. In a previous scene, she just kind of tapped the screen where the fly was, and it was just the image within the
Yeah,
TV. But at this point, she's actually able to pick the fly off, and it's a real fly. And
yeah,
that looked great. It was a great effect.
yeah. I thought that was a really cool scene, actually. Like, just the fly moving and that, just that unnerving nature of seeing that, putting yourself in her shoes, and just, um, being in that moment, and they said picking it off and seeing that. Like, I thought that was a really cool scene. Watching that, I was just like, oh, this, and it just looked great. It was a really, really good little effect, and it
Yeah, I
looked
mean,
awesome.
for CGI that's 20 years old, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. Um,
And I don't know if you noticed, but like because the image that she picked it off of was black and white and grainy, when she picks the fly off, it's still black and white and grainy.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It
It
looked
it was
great.
really well done. I really enjoyed
Yeah.
that part of it. Yeah,
And this actually kind of foreshadows for us what happens later on because we know, oh shit, something from the image from the video can come into real life.
yeah, yeah. Which is again clever. I liked it a lot.
Rachel goes to the library looking for a lighthouse that she found hidden in the videotape. This is what you were saying earlier. She took the video to some sort of professional setup. I guess she works for a newspaper, so she has access to this sort of stuff.
Mm.
And she's like trying to see the images all the way to the end of the film, and then she's tracking it all the way to the right, I guess. And there's this image of a lighthouse. Now, there of all the stuff that happens in this movie, this I found a little bit. I didn't believe it because I don't know. Did you when you were watching the scene? Did you see a lighthouse? Like they didn't even flicker it for a second. It's like all the way to the right. I don't know.
Yeah,
I didn't buy this part.
no, I think when they said it, I was like, oh, okay, my brain kind of made the connection. But I was looking at it, going, what are we looking at here? Because it's blue and grainy um, through the screen, and I couldn't really make anything clear. But once they said it, I went along with it. I mean, I guess I was pretty invested in this film
Yeah,
by that stage, and I was like, "Hey, okay, cool, let's go."
you're
And
like
I'm
sure,
a
let's
pretty
do it.
casual film watcher, and I wanted to sort of try and turn off the analytical brain a little bit and just enjoy this movie on like a first viewing kind of thing. And I feel like I should have done a bit more research, but yeah,
No, I love it. Like that's the way you. That's you're like a director's best friend, right? Like that's what you want. You want to just be able to enjoy the movie.
yeah, because I don't know, I just watch some really cheesy old movies and I love them, and you're like, yeah, just don't worry about that, like, let's move
Oh
on,
yeah,
and
trust
and
me. Like B horror movies are some of my favorite movies, so I completely understand
yeah,
loving it with its flaws and sometimes for its flaws. You know.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
when you mentioned it, like I remember at that point going, is it okay? Yeah, all right, cool. And then it was found so easily. I mean, I know they had they had some kind of geographical knowledge of where the video matched or came from. Um, in the conversations, they're saying it's coming from this island, aren't they? Like earlier on, and they definitely are in the Japanese version saying it's coming from down here. So, and obviously, not talking about the Japanese version, but they already have some sort of idea of roughly where it is, and so like I was like, I guess you can spend a whole movie trying to find where that island is, or you can go right. They know it's the island, and go
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
so
Yeah. This isn't
yeah,
a movie about like finding lighthouses. You know.
yeah, yeah,
So,
right.
so you forgive them for that. But yeah, she does go to
Yeah,
the library looking for a lighthouse that she found in that hidden
mm,
or that hidden section of the videotape or whatever.
yeah,
And okay, here's something I just thought of. We find out later on that the videotape was created. Well, it's hypothesized that the videotape was created by Samara imprinting these visions that she has onto a videotape. It's not like somebody actually recorded these images. These are images from Samara's brain that she has psychically imprinted onto a videotape.
Yeah.
Why would she hide this small little lighthouse image all the way to the right of the film, or where you'd have to use a special machine in order
And
to see?
also, like, it kind of becomes apparent that Samara's goal is to be released, right? Like, so why not
Yeah.
just put a map on there, imprint a map on there? Like,
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm right
exactly,
here,
right?
come and get me. But yeah, hey, whatever. Like,
Or okay, I just wanted to, I hadn't even thought about that, but like, yeah,
yeah,
why isn't the image of like her in the well with like, yo, come get me, please?
yeah, like, here's my life story. Just sort this shit out, please. Like, uh,
Why did she drop a pin?
yeah,
So she goes to the library looking for for that lighthouse. This leads her to Anna Morgan, the woman seen in the tape who lived on Moesca Island with her husband and daughter who raised horses. Rachel discovers that a mysterious tragedy befell the Morgan Ranch in which all the horses seemed to go mad, killing themselves attempting to flee the ranch. And this was one of the scenes in the cursed video. We
mm,
saw a bunch of horses on the shore who they drowned. This presumably caused Anna Morgan to become severely depressed, and shortly after going to a mental institution, she committed suicide. So Rachel also notes that she was absent-mindedly scratching out faces in images, just like Katie did in her Trapper Keeper binder, whatever,
mm,
with those images as well. So that was kind of cool. So she's progressing along just like Katie was.
yeah. And it's really cool. And I actually think like this whole backstory here would make a really cool movie on its own. You know, this
Right.
like I'd watch the hell out of that. You know, like it's dark. It's a dark story, man. But I think it sounds
It's
great. And I
dark
mean,
and it gets a little bit. I think under a lesser director or a lesser writer, it could have got kind of convoluted and
yeah, it's handled really
get
well. I think.
confused. Yeah, it
Yeah,
is handled really well.
because like as I
Uh,
say, like the layers of it, it's quite deep. You know, even going to the doctor, and there's this, and then there's the the hospital, I guess, that they're Samara in, and it's there's these multiple kind of layers to it, and I guess that why you can excuse some of the we'll just gloss this, move to there. But it works really well in not getting bogged down in that story because again, it wasn't until we were talking about it now, sort of unpacking the movie, that I go, that's actually a really good story on its own. Like if you were to have someone do the prequel to this, which I'm sure has probably been done. I know there's this kind of a bit of a franchise around it now, and they go and unpack all of that happened at the island. I think it would be really cool. And there's he's moved across these three things pretty effectively. You get all the everything you need to know, while also getting the sense that there was a lot more there. I think that's not easy to do. So
yeah, I think it's important that he gives us small tidbits of these people's lives and what led them to it, but he doesn't give us everything, and he doesn't
yeah,
spoon feed it to us either. He
yeah,
does, you know, he does give the audience some credit and lets them kind of deduce for themselves, you know, which I
yeah,
liked. I liked about
yeah,
that. So
absolutely.
so unfortunately, just as Rachel is beginning to truly fear that there's something dangerous about the tape, Aiden ends up watching it. Oh, and I think this is what happens. She has a nightmare, and in the nightmare, Samara grabs her arm, and when she wakes up, she looks at her arm. She sees that there's that bruise or whatever
Yeah,
stain or whatever it
yeah.
is, and then she gets out of bed and runs and sees that Aiden is watching it. So that's when that
Mm.
happens. So she says, "Why did you watch it?" And the kid, I forget what he said, but basically he wanted to watch it.
Yeah.
So I mean,
The
it's a
middle-aged man, I'll
kid's.
do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I pay the bills around here, not you.
Yeah. You can't tell me what to do. I do what I
Yeah.
want.
And so on the same day, Noah calls Rachel and tells her that he believes her finally about her claims about the tape because he sees himself in a convenience store camera with a blurry face.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool scene, actually.
Yeah, it was a really cool scene. Well, even like the cashier was like, "You're gonna die." He's like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, because he
Yeah.
just bought cigarettes, you know."
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so then she says, so as they're talking on the phone, she says he watched it, and Noah's like, "Who?" And then she says, "Our son." And I feel like this
Yeah.
was way too dramatic. Like I don't know, like this was your first time watching it. Did
Yeah.
you pick up that that was their
Nope.
son already?
I had nothing, and that's what I was
Really?
saying. Yeah,
Okay.
that's just when that moment that they have the walk through, like not even the head nod. Like what are you doing, Dad? Like we
Yeah.
get that. Like I knew they'd been together, obviously, because when she's at his place and the other girl comes in, gives him a kiss, and then like he goes down the elevator. Like, this is what happens, he's down the elevator,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
sort of have that moment. But it's still like I don't know. Nah, I had no idea. And then so I saw this. I'm like, oh, big penny drop moment. Um, but yeah, then I was just kind of like, what a loser, like.
Yeah. Well, then I'm happy to hear that because I was thinking, and I don't. It's been so long since I saw the original, and I saw this one when it came out, and I saw it a couple times afterwards. So I can't put myself in that frame of mind of anymore of not knowing that they're sons, that that's his dad
Yeah,
or whatever. So I was like, it didn't hit like they thought it was, but it sounds like it did. So that's kind of cool.
yeah. I mean, I was pretty chilled out. So on the beanbag, watching in the lounge room, and I was like, oh, okay, sweet, So that was good.
Yeah. So as he talks to her on the phone, we see a pile of developed photographs that Noah has recently taken of himself, all with his face distorted. And I
Yep.
should have mentioned earlier on that he is a photographer, so obviously he has access to all these different cameras, and he's taking pictures of himself to see if it's just a film or a camera, but it's not. So Rachel goes to the Morgan's house via boat or a ferry. I couldn't remember what the word was I was looking for when I was
Yeah,
typing this up. Okay.
more
So
than a barge,
Rachel,
and it's definitely a ferry. Yeah.
a barge, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So Rachel goes to the Morgan's house via ferry or a barge and comes across a horse in a trailer. And to like a dumbass, she just starts petting the horse. I'm like, why are you? This is not your horse. This is not a zoo. This isn't a petting zoo. Like, what? Don't touch that horse. Even if
Yeah.
you weren't a cursed woman. What are you
Yeah,
doing?
right. Like I like don't get me wrong, I totally get the urge to pat any animal that comes my way. But read the room. That horse did not want you anywhere near it. Like, you know, but no, whatever. You do what you want. You
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean,
yeah.
like the horse gave her fair warning, right?
Yeah.
She tried to pet him like 3 times, and on the fourth time, he's like, "Fuck this shit, I'm out," right?
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
just like broke down the trailer door.
Yeah, man. No, and again, good scene, but like what I was thinking, like, and again, sort of, I guess it pulled me out a tiny bit, but it's mostly because I was sort of just, I don't know, I'm like, how are you going to explain this to people? So I was trying to pat the horse. It didn't want to be patted. I kept trying to pat it. It got out, and then, well, that happens. And yeah, but the way it's running around, like, what a terrifying scene! Like, with that horse coming. I guess horses are scary, man. Like, I think like a friend at school used to have a paddock next door, and I remember we had like a bit of a cubby house or a fort in there. But sometimes that like the male horse would be in that area, and you were like, oh, you can't go in there because it's going to charge you if you go near it. So yeah, so it's been that enclosed space. Like I thought it was a really good scene, smashing the car up.
Yeah. So like he just caused the horse just causes havoc on the ship. It runs down to one end, and then like if it's like gathering speed, and then runs down towards the other end towards Rachel, and like leaps over her, and like Rachel has to duck down. And as I just thought it was such it's a terrible, terrible scene. The horse leaps over Rachel and doesn't clear it all the way, and like kind of the back legs kind of clip, and it just like topples head over hoof or whatever. And it's
Yeah,
terrible to it's a terrible scene, but it's funny. It's not something you ever think you'd see in your life, like a horse
yeah, right.
on a boat jumping over it, diving into the water. So it dives into the water, and then it's going downstream, and so everybody follows from the top the I don't know boats, the beginning of the boat, and they run back to the end of the boat, and you're like, oh no, what's going to happen? You hear the propeller going, and then you hear this horrible sound, and then just this pool of blood comes up. Amazing
Yeah,
scene.
yeah. It's a great scene, and it's probably one of like I said before, the really intense moment, and yeah, like that whole time, like watching the horse in the water, I'm thinking like, oh, someone throw out a life hoop or whatever you call those things, like
A
get a
life
net
hoop.
down
Yeah,
there.
everybody's got a
Yeah,
life hoop.
I'm sure people know what I mean. I don't know. I don't know boats very well either. Like we're talking about I know going to the beach and stuff before, and I'm always like, fuck the beach, man. There are sharks in there, right?
Yeah.
But
but but in this world in which they're able to throw out a life hoop, then the horse has to be cognizant enough to grab onto it. I love it. I
yeah,
love the idea.
yeah, no, and
It's
yeah,
like
but yeah, no,
BoJack Horseman.
yeah, right. And the little girl watching over the edge just to rub salt into the wound. Like,
That's right. I was going to mention that. There's a
yeah,
little girl who sees this. She's like, ah.
yeah, she's never eating meat pies again, man. Like, now I
Oh
know where
man.
the meat comes from.
Like I said, horrible scene, but also a bit funny and just amazing.
Yeah, no, it's good. And yeah, people hate animal death in their horror. I know it gets talked about a lot, but people hate it, and so I'd be interested to know how that was taken at the time. I guess it's not a dog, so there's that.
Right.
But
Well, I
mm,
also imagine like there's this is so obviously CGI. Like
yeah,
nobody would actually film a scene like this. Like the worst kind of monster wouldn't even film this sort of scene. So I
yeah,
think yeah, I think people know it's CGI. I don't know if people care about animal cruelty if it's CGI. Maybe they do. I mean, people have their views and stuff. So
yeah, that's right. But yeah, no, really good scene and kind of a good sort of wake up call in the middle of this movie because you said it's a suspenseful movie and it's as I said I was expecting something much more intense, and that's not to say that it doesn't have its terror because it certainly does, and it's definitely a
right,
very creepy film. But it's probably pretty halfway through the film at this point, and that big shock there really kind of that's right, like we're watching a movie that's just as you're starting to get things sort of start to find out a few things, expecting some more kind of scares, and then that happens. I thought it was really timed well as well to set up, what continues to happen next, and things start sort of getting darker and darker from
yeah,
here, which was really good. So
yeah. Like I like how you put that. It's a great like wake up scene to remind you of
mm,
what's happening.
yeah,
Um, so then she finds Richard Morgan at his home, who refuses to talk about the video or his daughter. In fact, or his I'm sorry, he refuses to talk about the video, his wife or daughter, and in fact, he seems very standoffish and angry when she says that she has a tape. He asks if that's the only one, and she says no, and he kind of closes his eyes as if to say that if it was the only one, he might have killed her. And he did have
yeah,
like a hook in his hands. Like I love the subtext in this
yeah.
interaction with them.
Absolutely, it was. yeah, very kind of this and like that like the anger. There is it. Brian Cox, the actor, did really um, did a great job there. I think like it was very menacing. I liked it.
Right. Yeah, his energy was very. It's like old timey farmer meets like really like murderous dad. It was kind of weird. I liked it
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah, no, it was really cool. I dug it.
So in the meantime, Noah goes to the mental institution, and he breaks in due to like really poor security. Like I don't think this was HIPAA compliant at all. Um,
Yeah,
it's not like he just like fakes out the security guard. He's like, and the receptionist. I think the receptionist did a good job. She's like, "You're not seeing those files," and he's like, "Hey,
yeah,
listen, I've been up there before, guy."
yeah.
And the security guard is a dumbass. Was like, "Nice try. They're downstairs." I was like,
Yeah, and it sort of again comes out. There's a few times in here like in navigating the layers of it, just these little plot devices that just go kind of like snakes and ladders, climb the ladder to the next bit, like it's
"Yeah,
which just moves you through the plot and it's totally I'm invested. I'm buying it. Yeah, yeah. Maybe it's a little bit easy if I look at is there a real challenge there? No, we can just find out what we need to know,
yeah,
and
let's
that's
just
good.
get in there." I
Yeah,
mean, they did us a favor by just adding that one thin layer of security guard and receptionist, right?
yeah,
They could have very easily just had him sitting down at a desk already looking at the stuff.
yeah. Having a nap, and then I like when he goes down there, the next security guard, he's like, "Oh, someone's already checked it out. You did,
Yeah,
Richard."
I love that scene. I love that
Yeah,
actor too, or that character was great. So Rachel goes to see. Oh, wait, while he's getting some. I forget what he gets here, but just various research to take them a lot to
yeah.
further the plot along.
He gets like, and this is where there was kind of some stuff about like birth. There's a lot of miscarriages and stuff like that in there, and it was
Right,
all
that's
pretty
right. That's
dark material, um, and yeah, it
yeah.
was just pretty cool. So
So then Rachel goes to see the local doctor to ask about the Morgan family. The doctor tells her that Anna wanted a child more than anything, but was never able to successfully carry a fetus to term. Then one winter they left and returned with Samara, whom they adopted. But after some time, Anna started complaining about visions that only happened when Samara was around. So she sent them both to a mental institution, which is kind of like a very easy way to like if that was how you got rid of all of your problems in the 70s, it's like holy shit. But actually, like now that I think about it, I've heard horror stories of that exactly happening.
yeah,
And then the doctor even says, ever since that girl's been gone, everything's been better. It's like holy shit.
yeah, and it's like this the intrigue's starting to pay off here, and like okay, and yeah, it's yeah. Again, I thought it was really cool. Liked
Yeah.
that kind of that sort of investigative approach, and yeah, I liked it. It's a bit like there were times I don't know when Shutter Island came out, but there were parts of it that kind of reminded me of that sort of thing going on as well. Like that, you kind of got that horror, investigative horror sort of thing going on. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it definitely straddles the line, or no, it's definitely a horror movie, but it
oh,
very easily
absolutely,
could
I
have been
agree
a
100%.
thriller. It could have
Yeah,
been a thriller if they just took out a couple scenes.
yeah,
If
I
that
just think that it's got a
investigative
couple
part.
of tropes in that kind of the structure. I don't think it was trying to be a thriller at all, but I think it was
Right,
good in the way, like because in the '90s there was many more sort of thrillers, wasn't there? Than obviously you have the sub-teen movies and stuff like
right,
that. Was kind of the serial killer kind of era, wasn't it? They say when you do the reading
right.
and
Well, they
stuff, but
even
mm,
like they tried to claim Silence of the Lambs is a thriller. It's like no, that's a horror movie, but it
yeah,
has that
absolutely,
same kind of investigative part of it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely,
So Rachel goes back to the Morgan's house where she discovers the tapes of Samara's conversations with the doctor, the ones that were missing from the institution. And Samara, in the videos, in the tapes, Samara timidly explains that she does in fact want to hurt people. She's sorry about that, but she does want to hurt people, and it won't stop. So Samara's long
Mm.
hair is covering her face, and it's looking so fucking creepy. And there's a therapist there talking to her, and she's like, your dad loves you, and she's like, Daddy loves the horses. It's like, God damn.
Mm.
After watching the video of Samara's conversation, or in the middle of watching the video, she's attacked by her Samara's father, Richard Morgan, who strikes her in the head. He's taken all the electronics in the house into his bathroom and has filled the bathtub with water. And then so Rachel is like following him and saying, "You killed her, didn't you? You killed a girl." He says, "My wife was never supposed to have a child." So this
Mm.
again, I like that they don't fully explain what happened. They don't spoon feed it to us, but we just know that something happened. You know, something was wrong
Mm.
with this girl. So he states that the girl was evil, and then promptly unalives himself by standing in the bathtub and turning on the electronics via like a switch controlled extension cord around his neck, and he just electrocutes himself.
Yeah, it's a pretty good scene too. Eh? It's like you need to stop piggybacking those power adapters, man. Yeah, even that like the whole why he's chosen that method, like because there's like I said there's a lot of that subtext that he might be attacking um Rachel, and then he goes the opposite way. He's like, well, this is what she wants, and hopefully this will put an end to it. And is he really kind of reached that point where he's like, well, if the video's back out there, I'm going to save these lives by doing this, yeah, it was good.
So Noah arrives at the house just after Richard's death, and together him and Rachel go to. So backing up a little bit, while Rachel was leaving to go to while she was leaving to go to the Morgan house, her son Aiden gave her a drawing, and now she looks at it, and he also said something. He said that Samara didn't like the horses; they kept her up, so she couldn't sleep. So she finally put two and two together, and she's like, she slept in the barn. So they
Yeah.
went to the barn. They did discover there's a little room where Samara was kept by her father,
Mm.
or I would say by her parents.
Yeah. That ladder.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, they had to climb the ladder. That's right. This is
Mm.
really sad. So, but at this point, though, we still are sympathetic with Samara, and I don't know if we're ever unsympathetic to the character, but we do know that because there's a kind of a false ending,
Yeah.
everything's not how it seems. So yes, she's a little kid, and yes, she probably shouldn't be living in a barn, and she shouldn't have had the ending that she had. But like something was happening with her as well. She
Yeah.
had
Even
powers,
like
and
there's that we've got that sympathy for her, but you see it again like with that. Yeah, I do want to hurt people. It's all
right,
still very much part of her character, isn't it? So,
yeah,
but like is she possessed? What's going on there? We don't know, but
that's what I love. It's
mm,
not like a
mm,
straightforward like sympathetic character. There's so much depth to it. I kind of I
yeah,
love it a lot.
it's really good. It just keeps, and I think that's what good horror does. It just asks you these questions you got to ask yourself. You're like, there's always a yeah, but and
Right.
and I like that. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's good.
So um so they're looking around the room, and they discover that there's something behind some wallpaper. So they tear down the wallpaper, and they discover a burned image of a tree, which Rachel remembers or recognizes from the videotape, and she also remembers seeing it near the cabin at Shelter Mountain Inn.
Yeah,
So from this, we begin to understand that Samara had the supernatural ability to burn images into things around her, including her parents and the videotape. And some people think also horses, and that's why they were scared. And
yeah,
also her parents, which is she driving her mother to kill herself.
yeah.
And so she was not a is it a psychic? No, somebody with
The telepath, is it?
what's the ability? Yeah, that's what it is. With telepathic
Telekinesis,
abilities,
telepath.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, an evil, or an evil
yeah,
version of that, right?
yeah. And like those images are spooky, man. So comes again to that
Yeah.
sympathy, like she's doing this stuff, man. Like maybe she deserves it.
Right.
Yeah.
Imagine putting those images into like a horse's mind. Oh, so like like wow. Okay, so much stuff. Let me hurry up with this. So like her father hated her or was scared of her, so kept her in the barn with the horses. And so to get back at her father, she has the horses kill themselves.
Ooh,
It's like,
yeah, spiteful. Hey,
yeah, wow.
obviously,
Um,
like she's a human who's being kept in horrible circumstances, and we're like, oh, the
right,
horses, but
exactly. Yeah, exactly,
but,
exactly.
but yeah, no, yeah. Again, when you start unpacking that, and that's what's so good. Like you're saying before, he trusts the audience to make these decisions, and they're good. Like, and our brains will do that. You can give people a little bit of information, and we'll fill in the rest, and interpret these things, and it's good. And I think, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah,
what I
I
like
like it.
talking about, like these long form conversations about a movie. It's like you just unpack stuff. Well, when a movie is really good, you could just unpack stuff, and that's what I love about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So back to Shelter Mountain we go, and I'm starting to think like this is very circular. And then as I was researching the movie, both the writer, well, I would attribute this to the original writer of the novel, is that he did it this way because he wanted things to feel circular, and that's why he called it, the ring. Things were
Mm.
circular. We come back to the same part, to the same place many times, and in the end we are back where we started in the beginning. So um, they arrive at Shelter Mountain Inn, and Noah goes Hulk and starts smashing things out of anger because Rachel believes that she's out of time, but he says no. And then so after smashing things, they notice that the marbles that fell on the floor are kind of pooling on the floor, and they remove the rug and they see some mildew on the wood, and Noah gets out an axe and starts breaking it down, and they find basically a well. They've covered the well with a hotel, right, or a
Yeah, yeah,
motel.
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's the cabins, isn't it? I don't know what.
yeah. The only thing that I didn't understand is those cabins look very old. Well, I
Yeah,
guess if we're doing it in real time, this happened in '78 and we're in 2002, so 78, 88, 98, 22 years. I guess those cabins are made out of wood. They're weathered. I guess that's fine. That's okay.
yeah, yeah,
Um, so as he's taken to axe to the floor, we see that the TV starts flashing, and I think it's because it's after 10 o'clock. It's officially 7 days
mm,
since she's seen the video. So there's kind of water coming out of the TV, and then the TV is screwed down to the wood because it's a hotel. They don't want people to steal it, and so it's being unscrewed, and we assume by Samara, and then they drop a rock down into the well, and a cloud of flies come out of the well. They kind of get scared of that, and this results in the TV um, coming off of its base and falling into Rachel. Rachel falls down into the well, and then she ends up finding Samara's body. And this is a really cool scene. Like she's looking down and she sees like hair floating, and then Samara's body just kind of floats into her hands, and it looks like
yeah,
it hasn't decomposed at all. It looks like
yeah,
brand new.
yeah. Which I'm glad they used that effect there because it was it added that uncanny kind of terror, and because I was watching this going, well, hang on, how come she hasn't disintegrated, and especially in water, like, and
Right.
yeah, it was cool, a really good effect. I liked it.
So very slowly the body starts to disintegrate, but she uses her ability to show Rachel what happened. And what happened was that Anna, Samara's mom, attempted to smother Samara with a garbage bag in order
Mm.
to kind of, well, obviously to kill her, but in order to end the madness created by Samara's ability, which was, Samara was trying to get her mom to kill herself.
Yeah.
And then she kind of dumps her body in the well afterwards.
Mm.
Unfortunately, she wasn't dead, and Samara's eyes open as she sinks into the water, and she watches closely as her mother pushes a rock over the well, and this is where we see that ring of light.
Yeah. It was really, really, really well done. Yeah.
This scene is kind of otherworldly. I mean, this the flashback scene to Anna walking up to Samara. It looks amazing. It looks like out of an art film or something. So if you look closely at Samara's fingers, she's lacking fingernails as a result of trying to climb out of the well. So her body rapidly decomposes in Rachel's arms after Rachel awakes from the vision, and then Rachel notifies. Obviously she's got. They get her out of the well, and they notify the authorities, and the cops show up. Suppose she's given a proper burial and presumably putting her spirit to rest. While the cops are there, Noah and Rachel are kind of like sitting around, and he asks her how long you think she could have survived being trapped in a well, and Rachel guesses that you could have survived for 7 days.
Mm.
Hence, you have 7 days once you see the video, and I just think that's so terrible. No, I was just gonna say it's just the idea of being trapped in a well for 7 days is absolutely
Oh man,
horrific.
yeah, and that's what I was gonna say before. So you talk about that PG-13 rating, like it's bloodless, but then as soon as you start unpacking that subtext, like just that is just a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And you start thinking about that and everything that goes into that, like the panic, the starvation, you know, all of that. It's that's dark, man. That's just especially like you
Yeah,
think you've left this kid for dead. This kid's like, yeah, regardless of how evil they are, they're terrified. And even that, like when you think like, oh, what's Samara's goal in getting out? And it's still, I just want to get out. I just want to get out. I just want to get out. Like it's, yeah, it's yeah, it's a pretty really good piece of horror.
yeah, amazing. It actually reminds me of that old ghost story. I'm sure you've heard of it, or maybe not. It's of the bride to be being stuck in the chest in the attic when she was playing like hide and go seek with her groom. Did you ever hear about that
Yeah,
story?
yeah, it rings a bell. I think it was like I had a little book of like these ghost stories, and you got the one who the woman you never take the ribbon off her neck,
Yeah.
and her head falls off, that sort of thing. Yeah, yeah.
Again, growing up, being in love with horror, I read a bunch of short story horror books from the '60s and '70s and stuff. And this one was of yeah, she there was a bride to be, she or a bride or whatever. She was hiding from her husband on the wedding day, and she hides herself in a chest, but the chest gets locked, and she's up in an attic, and everybody thinks she ran away and she didn't want to get married. And then like 5 years later, the would be husband goes up to the attic and opens up the chest, and he sees that like she tried to scratch her way out of the inside
Yeah.
of the attic, and her nails are all gone. It's like, oh shit, it's terrible.
Yeah, I'm just the legend of the mistletoe bough. I'm just looking at it on Wikipedia, and it's like an old folk story that's been sort of put through songs and
Oh yeah,
Kate Moss
that's
into a
probably what it
story,
is.
2013 short story collection, Mistletoe Bride, Other Haunting Tales. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
oh, love
always
stuff
stuck
like
with
that.
me. That it's
Yeah,
great.
it's just that really good kind of creepy kind of ghost story stuff, which is
Yeah.
yeah.
If anybody were to be, I don't believe in ghosts or anything like that. Actually, that's a good question I have for you. Do you believe in ghosts?
Um, no, I mean as a kid growing up, as I said, in this little rural country town, New Romney in England, you kind of convince yourself you do. And but then having said that, like the answer is no. But then sometimes like I think weird stuff happens. Like one of our old houses, after we moved in, we were like, did anyone like die in this place? Because we had a ball up on the kid's bed, and like, and then we hear bouncing, boom, 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 and we're like,
Oh,
okay,
shit.
well, there's a rail on the kid's bed. The windows are all closed. There's
Yeah.
what's happened there, But weird shit happens. But no, if I was put on the spot, nah, yeah, just nah.
I always tell myself that that's the house settling. Like that's
Yeah,
what we said.
right.
Like houses, no matter what the sound is, I don't care if it says like "you're going to die." I'll be like, "That's just the house settling." I don't care.
So it's my house, the
Yeah,
conjuring
yeah,
one. Like,
yeah.
yeah.
But I was gonna say, if there's ever anybody who deserves to be a ghost and come back and haunt people, it'd be that bride stuck in the chest. You know.
Yeah, man.
So,
Horrible.
all right. So at this point, this is that kind of false ending. At this point, it seems that everything is well again. Rachel's back at home with Aiden, and she tells him that they will no longer be troubled by Samara. However, Aiden quickly corrects her and says that Samara, or questions, he asks her, like, "Oh, you let Samara go?" She's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Everything's fine." He's like, "No, you shouldn't have let her go." Then he shows her the bruises on his arm given by Samara in a nightmare.
Mm.
And Aiden is like, Aiden is basically saying, "You fucked around, and we're about to find out." But
Yeah.
I feel like this is information you could have given her a lot earlier. Like you were just like giving her bits and pieces of information. We don't even know
Yeah.
how you know this stuff, but you do know it. So maybe
Yeah.
tell her, "Hey, don't let her out."
Yeah, right. You creepy little bastard. Like,
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. Oh, by the way, Mum,
Little
we better make a copy. Like,
exactly, yeah.
you're
Little
gonna go
shit.
stay with your aunt. We're gonna go and find the murdered girl, give her a proper burial. Okay. When would be the right time, dude? When would be the right
Yeah.
time?
So
Yeah.
so in the probably the most memorable scene from the movie, and probably the most unsettling, Noah, we're back in Noah's office, and he's going over some film prints, or in his apartment, I should say, when his TV turns on. Let me see the static. In the same fashion that Rachel's niece Katie experienced before her death. Noah turns it off casually before it turns itself on again, which alerts Noah. He's then treated to a recurring image of a well in which a long haired female figure, Samara, crawls out of the well and slowly walks towards the TV screen. So I've seen this scene so many times. Seen it in the original, seen it in this one, seen it in the remakes. I've seen it in when they're making fun of it in what is it, Scary Movie.
Scary movie. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was like, this is nothing. This is so outdated. But as soon as she crawls out of that TV, I was like, fuck, that's creepy. It just brought me back to that feeling of like dread of like, oh shit, this isn't right.
Yeah.
So this is actually your first time seeing this, because or had you seen this scene in other pop
Yeah. I
culture?
think,
Because it was
and that's like, it's impossible to avoid that
right,
scene.
right,
It's it's in memes, it's everywhere. It's in movies, and it just exists. And
mm,
that's where, like, I was very much aware of that, but I still, with the era, kind of, as I said before, I kind of had lumped this in with the teen slasher craze. And so I thought that you were going to be seeing a lot of that, like, on multiple occasions, not this big build up to that really awesome moment. And it sort of shows how good the film, or how well the film is structured, simply because you've seen that a million times, but when it happens, you're still like, okay, yeah, that's effective, like,
right,
and
yeah,
yeah, it's just so cool. Like, and the whole, that the falling down, and that, as she's coming closer and closer, and even the way, like, I read that they filmed it. She walks backwards, and then they play that forwards to get that weird motion that she's got there.
oh
And
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. The way we see her coming out is actually just reversed of her going back in. Yeah, it's
yeah,
great.
and yeah, and it's just, yeah, it's really cool. It's really effective when you see her face. Like, you finally see the eye, and she's, doing whatever her superpower is to kill Noah. Um, and yeah, no, it's really effective. I liked it a lot because sometimes and I think it's definitely practical effects in that moment, isn't it? Like where she, the face and stuff. Because
Yeah, the face is like her crawling out is CGI, whereas I
yeah,
think in the original it was not CGI, or I have to go
yeah,
back and remember that part. But
yeah. Because I remember looking at that one, going, "Oh, she seems quite old," but
yeah,
yeah, no, like, and it was a good choice because I think if that had been CGI there that moment, and hopefully it's not making me sound like a tool, but like, you probably would have lost some of that impact. But that really realistic motion of it, and you're like, okay, yeah, no, that's good. It was really well delivered, and the whole movie, that's the payoff for the whole thing, isn't it? But
right.
yeah, they stuck it. I think they stuck that really well, and
Yeah, because if they had shown, because we don't know what happens, we know that the TV comes on and we see an image of the well, and then it always cut away. So this was,
yeah,
like you're saying, the payoff, and it was completely worth it throughout the whole movie. It was great.
yeah. It'd be really interesting to go back to 2002, see this in cinemas, because even then, like, I feel like there's been a change in trailers over the last few years, where the trailer itself is like a mini version of the film, and even if you don't
Yeah,
get the actual plot spoiled, you get scenes and things spoiled. And I think in a trailer, probably did, I don't know, did they put the arm out in the trailer? I'm not sure. I'd have to have a watch. But if you had no idea that was coming, I think that would just be like, wow, that'd be a really, really good moment, I think. Yeah.
right. Yeah, and it's like I've even gone back and like seen some like or heard some audio that's on YouTube now of people watching Halloween for like the first time in theaters in like 1978, and like just
Mm.
hearing their reaction to stuff that like now is
Yeah.
tame, or audiences this day and age wouldn't react to. I love that sort of stuff. So what you're saying is, yeah, like being able to see how audiences reacted in 2002 to that, of them hit her coming out of the TV. I would love to see it.
Yeah, it'd be cool. There'd be a fly on the wall, so to speak, and just watch that. But yeah.
Congratulations, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, just exercising my dad powers.
All right. So, Samara, what's his name? Noah is backing away from her, obviously in horror, and Samara like stops and kind of looks up, and I would say three-quarters of her face is covered with hair by her hair. But what we do see looks terrifying. It looks reminiscent of Reagan O'Neill in The Exorcist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, little girl. So,
So that
but
that
here's my
brow,
question.
hey,
Yeah, like the cracks and the fissures in the face and all that.
yeah.
Here's my question to you: is it like a Medusa thing where just seeing Samara is enough to kill you, or is it what other like? There's been other theories of when she's there, she implants a bunch of horrific shit in your head, and then you like go crazy, and then your heart explodes. What do you think it
Um,
is?
like my impression was that she is like using her telekinesis to stop you, because I mean the 16-year-old has the heart attack, the heart stops,
Mhm.
and I guess that plays out with fear too. But my original impression was she's got like a gaze that you know stops you, kills you, and that's what it is. Like it's that moment, like when you see the eye, they look at her like this. It's almost like she locks you in with it, like the Medusa stare, as you said. I don't think it's
Yeah,
just, oh, I've seen you and now you're real and my heart stops. Although it probably would if someone crawled out of my TV like that, my heart would probably stop too. But, but yeah, no, my impression was that it's because it's what she says. She wants to hurt people as well, and I think that she's doing it. You know what I mean? Like she
okay.
she could come out and ask for a hug. Hey, you buried me. Can I have a hug? But she said she's like, die, motherfucker. Like,
Yeah,
you know.
exactly. She's like, I want to hurt you. So
Yeah, that's right. So that was my interpretation of that. She's wondering, like, yeah, she finds out Noah's dead, and she's wondering, why haven't I died? What did I do differently? Is that what you're
right, but
talking about?
before
And
that, I was what she was like speeding to Noah's apartment to kind of
Oh
warn
yeah,
him of something, but I don't know why. So something happens. She wants to warn. Oh, that's
no,
right.
because the sun is
Obviously,
second.
yeah, because the son tells her. So she's trying to race to Noah's house. He's not picking up the phone, and then she gets there and she discovers his body. And he looks horrific. Like he looks like a hollowed out shell of himself. Looks
Mm.
great. Absolute great effect. Rachel drives back home, and, and she like runs into her apartment and like screams at Aiden to go in his room, which I thought was hilarious because Aiden was just like drawing circles, and she goes, "Go to your room." And he's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
Uh, and then she's like destroying the tape in hysterics. She's like, "What do you want? Like, what do you want from me?" And then unable to understand why she was spared but Noah was killed until
Mm.
she realizes that the she had destroyed the original tape, but she had made that copy for Noah, and that the copy is what the son saw. And so that copy was like underneath a couch something. So she looked under the couch and she sees a copy. So she puts two and two together. She realizes that she was spared because she made the copy. So the only way to escape Samara after watching the video is to make a copy of the tape and to show it to someone else, thus continuing the cycle. Rachel made a copy to show Noah, while Noah made no copies. So the movie ends with Rachel helping Aiden to make a copy of the tape. As the tape copy is made, Aiden turns to his mother and asks her, "Who are they going to show this tape to?" And then the movie
Mm.
ends.
Yeah.
So I know you said that you didn't see the full movie, the full original. Did you see
Mm.
the ending?
I think I did. And now, from memory, it's just that part's not. That she's just driving off in a car, and I'm trying to remember because it was quite late. We watched this.
I want to just put a spoiler warning here for anybody who hasn't seen the original. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay. So in the and do you mind if I tell you?
No, no, please go.
Okay, cool. So in the original, her father is part of their lives, right? And he watches the son while she's out doing her investigative stuff. And in the end, she calls her father and says, "Hey, I have a favor to ask of you." And then, like you said, we see her driving, and we're presuming she's driving to her father's house to show him the video and make him watch it.
Ah.
So that's the fucked up part of that original is that she
Mm.
sacrifices her father. But
Whew.
that's the movie. So what did you think of The Ring?
I enjoyed it. Once I became invested in it at first, I was like, oh, okay, so it's a little bit slower. It's a bit investigative because I kind of was expecting, like I said, that sort of that teen slasher, that haunted house kind of thing going on.
Yeah.
And once I sort of got involved in that quest, I really enjoyed it. And watching it unpack, and it's a really easy film to watch. It looks great. The story just unfolds as you go, and I enjoyed it. I'm really glad I watched it. I kind of wish I'd watched it earlier before I'd seen so many different takes on um,
Right, right.
that at the moment. But yeah, I'll watch the sequels now over the coming weeks and months, and yeah, I thought it was really cool. And yeah, also like reading like how much it affected, more introduction to supernatural horror and that weird kind of place it came out in,
Mhm.
was was really cool because it's sort of right at the forefront of that sort of thing booming
Yeah,
again, which is interesting.
I really like this movie, and after watching it for the podcast, and researching and all that, I like it even more because it's
Yeah.
really a smart movie. I mean, granted it had great source material,
Mm.
but a lot of American remakes have great source material and just fucking fuck it up, like they shit the
Yeah.
bed. But this one, they didn't do that. Now, I feel like for me, it didn't have the same emotional impact as the original because I felt the original the characters had more depth, and I actually connected with the characters more than I did in this one.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's better than the original for me, but it's still a great movie.
Yeah. It definitely is, and I think it's definitely worth its place as one that people talk about,
Mhm.
especially when you put a lot of that context in. Like, because I think watching it through my 2022 lens, it's okay, yeah, cool. Seeing that it's a bit like this, it's a bit like that, but yeah, it at the time, I think it would have been wow, this is pretty chilling. I mean, I'd have been what 19 then as
Yeah,
well, so it would have had completely different spin on things. And I think the other thing that I think is really cool, we talked about that VHS, um, even being kind of already sort of obsolete by the time the movie was made, or at least rapidly on its way to becoming obsolete. But it's also like there's a lot there you can unpack about what it's got to say about what we're consuming, how it's reaching beyond the screen, and that kind of thing. Um, you know, what harm is this actually doing? And there's a lot there. I think you can unpack it and interpret it a lot of ways and analyze it and different things. And I think that speaks to the quality of the film and the layers we've talked about.
yeah,
And I think that's always really good. It's not just this one dimensional, so no pun intended, um, story that is just disposable. There's a lot there you can go. Whoa, there's actually some meat to this, and yeah,
yeah.
it's a good film. I liked it.
One of the things I did like about this ending that was different from the other ending is that the original ending spoon feeds it to you, whereas this one it's
Mm,
left. You don't know what happens. But I was just thinking while I was writing up my notes for the movie is I guess we're the ones that they show the video to, right?
yeah, I was reading that a lot of the promo for it was like playing the video late at night with no real
Yeah,
context around it. So people were seeing it. Then when the trailer came, you've got 7 days, like, and and that's really cool. I mean, it's kind of an early take on viral or meme culture, which is really interesting, and especially like the way that sort of thing has evolved. You read like you even go through the South Park, the three acceptable memes. You got shirt wiener, bunny ears, and something else I can't remember it. And but yeah, like Snow Crash takes on memes, and it's from the early in the '90s. Um, and yeah, it's just really cool to see something like and it's kind of speaks forward as well. We share things on, and you look at some of these horrible things that happen. I do a lot of content writing for a YouTuber, and a lot of the stuff we come through, like you know, you look and go, hang on, this is about someone dying. Like, it's a video of someone dying. Why do we want to watch that? And it just gets shared like before you even realize what you're watching. And there was one in schools here last year. There was a suicide video going around through schools,
oh, that's
and
terrible.
like yeah, it just really horrible. But kids were just sharing it, passing it on, thinking it was funny. And then you had the normal kids just who've seen it going, oh my god, like what have you just shown me? I say normal like it's a real word that means anything, but you know what I mean. Um,
Right.
yeah, and I think there's a lot in here that we share these things, we share these experiences through video, and they can be traumatizing. And
I did want to say that you were talking about the promotions. I was just say what you were talking about how the studio promoted the movie, and one of the my favorite pieces of trivia I found um, is that to promote the film, the studio placed copies of the mysterious like killer tape at concerts and events. The
yeah,
tape
I
had a
read that.
label directing whoever watched it to a website, supposedly written by a pedophile who'd seen the tape and was now trying to warn others about his impending fate. This character was
Mm.
actually a subplot that was deleted from the theatrical
Oh,
release.
I read about that just before.
Yeah. And so the
Mm.
website contains links that led to other movie related mock ups, including a page written by one of Katie's friends who was unaware of Katie's death and believed she'd been kidnapped, run away. And there was a page written by scientists who researched psychic phenomena involving television transmissions. And then when the movie was released, DreamWorks deleted all the web pages and denied ever having anything to do with them. So I was like, that's so cool. Like this is pre like internet taking hold phase, and like where you can do this sort
Yeah,
of shit. The same thing with like the Blair Witch Project, Like nowadays, you
Yeah.
can't do anything like that.
No, because it's all just it's the irony of um, the actual fiction just being disproven and oh, this is fake before you even gets anywhere. Oh, it's just selling you something. And meanwhile, the real news is all just fake news all the time, and just people are taking it
Yeah,
with blind sinker. But yeah, no, it's yeah. I just think it was a really good, interesting period. People were willing to do those experiments on the internet rather than just go, "Oh, this is what my viral campaign works. This is what it's going to be." And boom, there was no science of experimenting and trying things, and it's just really cool. You wish you could have seen some of that yourself back then. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but obviously I
I,
had, I was a student at uni and stuff, but I wasn't plugged in enough to any of this to be on top of that. So yeah.
I know that I've heard of movies advertising via like TikTok, like doing some trying to do some sort of thing like that. But now that seems
Mm.
so like I don't know, played out or whatever. It doesn't have the same spirit that they had with these sorts of campaigns. But also, I'm just an old man yelling at a cloud, so don't listen
Yeah,
to me.
man, I know the feeling. I know the feeling. So.
So a couple things I wanted to say here real quick is the type of ghost that Samara and her Japanese counterpart Sadako are is based on the mythological, and I'm probably pronouncing this incorrectly, but Onryo, which is a Japanese ghost that manifests after dying in the grip of a powerful rage, and returns as a very pale and physical ghost to seek vengeance on the living. So that's what when they were making this remake, people were saying is that we don't have that. I don't know if you know about the Japanese culture or
Mm.
if my listeners do, but Japan has a lot of mythology based around this sort of stuff. They have very specific ghosts that happen when very specific situations die. And that just didn't translate in the American remake. But so in the end, it just ends up being a ghost. And it's while still effective, imagine if you had that backstory of knowing what type of ghost this was. I think it would have been, it would have hit a lot
Yeah,
differently.
absolutely. And it's interesting where like obviously these days people talk about like appropriation and stuff, but um, even if you had have made Samara's family a Japanese family who had moved here or something like that, I don't know if that would have worked, but
Right.
maybe you could have put that context in that way. But I love that kind of taking stuff from mythology and using it in this modern way. It's really cool without actually saying, "Oh, hi, by the way, this is a like a Dungeons and Dragons monster. This is what it is. Go and read the lore on it." But like using it in modern media in really inventive ways. And yeah, I'm not too familiar with Japanese cinema at all. Even like even sort of the anime, the comic books and things the
Mhm.
manga that
Yeah.
students at school are reading. That like I say, it looks so cool, but again, it's so vast. There's nowhere to start. Like, and I'm
Okay.
old man yelling at cloud here now, but I'm sort of so far into my journeys in different genres that like someone will say, where do I start with getting into death metal? I'm like, oh, you don't start with death metal. You start with some sort of mainstream pop metal, and in 20 years down the track, you'll be listening to this. But you know, like,
I
and
gotcha.
yeah, but yeah, it's just really cool. But yeah, no, it probably does suffer from it a little bit. I think, especially if you've got that cultural knowledge. I think that's just powerful, and you can see that sort of rage, and it's even I sort of mentioned the banshee earlier, which is pretty specific to that sort of culture. When someone dies, the banshee screams, and you've got that context and that lore behind it. It's good. It's a powerful thing to be able to take use of, and it didn't stand out to me watching this the first time because I was like, okay, cool, ghost comes out of the TV, but knowing that is like, yeah, that's really cool. It just adds that extra layer and that bit of quality um, for me anyway. It would have been cool to see it referenced or alluded to in the 2002 version, but it didn't stand because you don't know what you don't know, I guess. So
Right. And another part of that lore is Samara's psychic abilities are known as nensha, which is a form of spirit photography that enables someone to burn images from their mind onto any solid surface just by thinking about them. So this explains why her adopted parents suffered nightmares and bad visions. This is
Yeah.
also how she burned her images onto the videotape that Katie and her friends used, and also how she burned that image of the tree into that wood. So again, part of Japanese mythology, not really translating into so like the Japanese audience when they see that they're like, okay, yeah, she has this ability, and we know that. And with the American society, it doesn't really transfer. So we're like, there's a she burned an image into the wood somehow, and that's
Yeah.
why if I had just seen this movie once, or I would kind of get maybe 60% of the story because it's
Yeah, that's right.
the background's not there for me. But I just
Yeah,
thought that
and
was
I
really
guess
interesting.
yeah, some of those like you'd even use them as just irony. I mean, how do you tell that without info dumping it um,
Right.
in the film? I mean, you could have the research scene in the library. Oh, this is what so and so is, and she can do this.
Yeah,
Which
I'm actually glad they didn't do that.
yeah, that's right. And show don't tell, I guess,
Yeah.
is always good, and people can find that out later. And then it's to me, it's only just sort of you saying it now. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I like that. And would it have
Yeah.
changed how I felt about it knowing beforehand? I guess it may have improved my sense of irony in the film because you know what might be coming. You're like, oh, okay, so wait for this. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
it works for me largely. I think.
Yeah. So, Zach, what we do now here is we rate the movie out of 5 upside down crosses.
All
So,
right,
what would you give The Ring?
I think I'd give it a four. Four upside down crosses. Yeah, I don't think it's a perfect film, but I think it's a pretty good film, and I think it's far better than an average film. And I think the fact that it does stand up after 20 years, and that's not always true. And a lot of films from around that genre, you're watching, you're like, oh, it's so of its time. But yeah, I don't think you got that vibe with this. So
I think that's completely fair, and that's kind of probably what I would give it to is 4 upside down crosses.
hmm.
I think that's fair. All right, Zach. In order to be fully absolved from your horror movie sin, I will recommend to you 3 movies that you can watch. It's up to you whether or not you want to watch these or not. But if you don't, you're gonna probably burn in the fiery pits of hell or something. I don't know. That's on you. That's not on me. So, the first one I want to recommend to you is Dark Water from 2005, starring Jennifer Connelly. And this is another Japanese remake, but I think it does a really good job of it. And it's similar to this remake here. And so I think you'll really enjoy that one.
Yep.
The other one that I recommend to you is Gothica from 2003, starring Halle Berry. This was a Dark Castle movie. I think this was kind of panned and people didn't give it a chance, but I think it's people are starting to re-examine it now, and it's really fun. I think you really dig it. Yeah, I think you should give this one a chance. And
Cool.
then we talked about it earlier, but It Follows from 2014 has a very similar setup, but it takes it a different way, and it's just kind of updated, and the soundtrack is amazing. I think you're really gonna love this one.
Yeah,
So I
awesome.
would recommend those 3 movies to you.
Beautiful. We're always looking for new movies to watch and come away from Tubi with some of the really cheesy old stuff and find some stuff on Google. So that's good. All right. Do you want me to say any that I thought of, or
Oh yeah, if you want to recommend some to me, hit me up. Hey, this is a first here. I love it.
oh well, I don't know. Look, you probably have seen them all, I guess. But just thinking about that kind of that TV, that image horror and stuff. There was one we watched really recently, and I don't know if you've seen it. Await further instruction. Um, it was a sort of set on Christmas. The family comes together, and then you know she's got the girlfriend comes, and the family's kind of like a nationalist English family. They try to escape, they can't get out, and then there's instructions coming through the TV, and they're all trapped in the house, and it was a really cool setup, really enjoyable movie. Um, so that was really good. I won't spoil any more of that, but that was a really cool one. Await further instruction. I think it was fairly recent, like maybe 2019, 2018. 2018 it says on Google. So that was really cool. Obviously, Sinister was mentioned earlier, and I think that makes a pretty good kind of joint view with this because you've got the kid thing going on, you've got the images and stuff as well.
Yeah, I hadn't even heard of that one, so I'm definitely gonna look that one up. And I've seen Sinister. I absolutely love it.
Sinister was interesting because we actually hadn't seen that. Well, I hadn't seen that before. I don't think my wife had either, but it comes up on those lists a lot as like one of the really terrifying kind of
Yeah,
horror movies in terms of the dread and stuff. But it was interesting. I'm not trying to sort of, for me, I was like, oh yeah, all right, cool. But my wife was like, no, this is actually really disturbing. Like, I get it. Like, and I was like, okay,
yeah,
because the creepy kids thing I think gets to her. Um, but also just the fact like the hangings and that sort of stuff. That's
yeah. Well, hey, creepy kids gets to everybody. Okay, that's not just
yeah,
a
right.
yeah. So,
Yeah. And
uh,
then I just thought for a bit of fun, well, the 80s ones. I don't know if you've seen The Brain, um, with the big giant brain.
the
Um,
Brain from
there's
the
a
'80s. No, I don't think I
yeah,
have.
80s, early 90s. There's a Shout TV one.
Okay.
I found that on Amazon Prime the other day, maybe New Year's Day. Sort of sat back with a couple of beers and watched that, and that kind of helped. There's a couple of beers, but yeah, you've got like
Okay.
the brainwashing coming through the TV, and yeah, it's a really cool one to watch. It's sort of practical effects, cheesy 80s horror movie, but it was good fun. And obviously TerraVision as well is another one where the satellite, the aliens, and all that kind of stuff, the TV and that. So yeah, thought that just that kind of keeping that theme of TV horror, which I guess has done a lot more than I thought about.
Um, Thank you very much for the movie recommendations. That's the first for this podcast. I appreciate that. I'm
Oh
definitely going to look those up. Otherwise, I'll burn in the fiery pits of hell.
yeah, well there you go.
Hopefully you'll watch those movies and then you'll come back some other time. We could talk about those movies or another movie. You've been a great guest. I really appreciate it, Zach.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
If you could please let my guests know what you got going on, your book, you have a new book that just came out, where they could follow you, Twitter, Instagram, everything.
Yeah, easy. Look, I'm pretty easy to find online at Twitter. Just Ashford underscore Zachary is my handle on there. My new book, When the Cicadas Stop Singing, came out September. It seems to have been received fairly well. I'm pretty happy with the reception it's had. People seem to be digging it. Sort of a post-apocalyptic um, thriller, a bit of creature feature going on in the Australian hinterland. Won't spoil too much in there, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. Just a novella, and that's basically it. I'm just sort of just trying to get some drafting done on what I'm working on now, and you can find me on Goodreads as well, I guess. Um, but yeah,
Where can
if
they
you
buy your
yeah.
books?
You buy my books at Amazon. Obviously, you can buy them at Barnes and Noble if you don't want to go through Amazon. I do have a couple here. Obviously, shipping from Australia to people internationally is a
Mhm.
royal pain, but if you are super keen, you can send me an email or a message on Twitter, and I can do that. Sign one and send it to you. But I don't really expect most people internationally to do that because shipping is a royal pain. But yeah, that's basically it. I mean, yeah, I'm usually around and trying to keep things moving and doing things. So
Cool. Well, Zach, I really appreciate you coming on and talking to me for over 3 hours about this movie. But I had a ton of fun. I hope you did as well.
no worries, man. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
If you would like to follow me, you can follow me on Twitter at MHC Pod, like My Horror Confessional Pod. You can follow me on Instagram at My Horror Confessional. My email is myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com if you want to email us any thoughts or ideas. The music was done by Taylor Fox. You can follow her on Instagram at the Taylor Fox. Her band is also going to be dropping an album called Great Hag, so look for that in the future. The artwork was done by my good friend Cap Mikey. You can follow him on Instagram at Cap'n_Mikey_art. And I just have one thing to add. Recently, Spotify's started allowing people to rate podcasts. So if you have the ability to, if you don't mind going out to Spotify and rating the podcast, it really helps out. And obviously, if you have iPhone or I don't know, I don't have Apple, whatever I think it is, you can rate it there as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.